Welcome. I'm your host, Manpreet, aka MMA Lock of the Night, and your boy on social media at MMA LOT, and joined as always by my guy Cody Saftik. You guys can follow him at CJ Saftik on Twitter, and we are here propping you up for UFC Vegas 63, headlined by a featherweight matchup between Arnold Allen and Calvin Kattar. A couple other interesting matchups sprinkled out throughout the card, but it's going to be tough for them to match the name value that we saw last weekend at UFC 280. Before we even jump into it, Cody, I would love to get your just quick thoughts about UFC 280 as a whole. Obviously, big win for Islam Makhachev in the main event. TJ Dillashaw going into that co-main event with an injury. Petr Yan possibly getting robbed by robbery of the year against Sugar Sean O'Malley. Beneil Dariush reminding us that he is a top flight lightweight as well. And Manon Fiorot possibly stamping herself to get a title shot in her next matchup. What stood out to you the most? And just your brief thoughts on UFC 280. I think everybody would love to hear that.
Yeah, listen, it was a good card. I mean, they definitely put a really good offering together, top flight competition. And yeah, it was pretty entertaining most of the way through. So we started off the card hot fire, bro. We're hitting everything, right? I think we got 8 straight picks to start it off. Guys that we had lots of confidence in, like KO Barahau, didn't look good, but all the same, 130-27s on 2 judges' scorecards. We move into the Bilal Muhammad fight. He's my official first underdog on the card. And, like, kick the absolute shit out of Sean Brady. Not only did he dominate Sean Brady at plus 125 to start the fight, but he was minus 190 after the first round. Like, it was like, dude, double down on this thing. Like, he just won the first round. He's only going to continue to get better. And Brady, those cardio issues, I don't know. Maybe he got tired. Maybe he got hurt. But he laid a whole lot of shots in this. So we're feeling super good about it. Move on to the main card. And then the Mateusz Gamrot fight, again, that would have, I wish I did it, but that would have been a great live bet spot on Beneil, because I thought Gamrot won the first round, and I thought we were going to lose the fight after that first round. Like, I thought we had it, but you could tell right then and there, what's the plan B? Because the wrestling's not going to work. You got him down twice, and he pops right back up. He threatens you immediately, and he didn't have, like, the long distance striking to really go with Beneil. And also, you and I talked about it, like, Gamrot seems like just an incredible fighter, well-rounded everywhere. Like, what's the one knock on him? Like, maybe he's got questionable ring IQ, this guy, right? He's a slow starter. He makes questionable decisions at times. And, like, Beneil, like, what's his best thing? High ring IQ, super high ring IQ, finds a way to win, executes a way to win. So that blew up some big tickets. But I was like, you know what? As long as Petr Yan wins, which I'm fairly positive he's about to win, it's going to save everything. It was slight plus money, parlaying him with Barahau. So this will be a slight win on the night. Maybe I roll into those profits into something else on the card or take it for next week. And yeah, I mean, what can I say? It was way competitive. I think Sean O'Malley did way better than anybody expected him to. So the one knock on Yan should have beat him more decisively. But I mean, listen, it's our job to just break down what we think is going to happen. But ultimately, the judge is sitting cage side. It's their determination, what they actually saw happen. I don't think there's any fix. I don't think there's any this and that. I know people like to speculate. It's just a sport, man. You see, like, terrible decisions all the time. Is this one the worst decision you've ever seen? No, not by a landslide. It's just nobody really agreed with it. The media didn't agree with it. The fans didn't agree with it. Didn't even seem like really Sean O'Malley agreed with it. And that's what makes it a bitter pill to swallow. But this is gambling, right? It's the same thing with NFL football. Your team should have won, but dude got like an offside, or dude got like a defensive pass or interference, or they threw a flag because you touched the kicker. Like, it's just like dumb luck that goes against you, that screws you. Same thing with the decision. So if you bet these fights straight up, then you were killing it those first 8 fights, having a great time. And that's cool too. If you're a parlay guy, which, you know, you're trying to hit that big number, just takes one of those little blimps and errors. That being said, the reason I don't get upset about this stuff anymore, because I used to, but dude, it's been a long time. It's been 12 years we've been doing this. Don't get upset about it. Is you'll end up on the other side. And there were people out there that bet Sean O'Malley, on the pretense of, bro, Jan's a slow starter. Sean O'Malley told me on his podcast he was going to beat him. They fucking bet him. And not only that, this is how sharp those sons of bitches are. Nobody bet him to knock out Petr Yan. Nobody bet him to submit Petr Yan. Everybody had him to win a decision over Petr Yan. It was juice to the titties. And they scored it. And they were on the proper side of that. So that's gambling in a nutshell. And hopefully, I don't want a greasy bounce on this card. Just give me my greasy bounce back in the future when I need it.
Yeah, for sure. Honestly, that decision was very skeptical. I think the thing that kind of put it over the top was that cut that Sean O'Malley was able to open up on Petr Yan in that third round. And I truly think that's what the judges likely saw and probably ended up scoring that fight for him. But man, regardless, very close fight, Very unfortunate for Pyotr Yan. Apparently, there's talks that he wants to leave the UFC because of all this fuckery that he's had to deal with over the last couple of fights. I'm sure he'll still get paid a boatload of money no matter where he ends up going anyway. Obviously, his manager is very well connected with other organizations as well, but we'll see what ends up happening. I hope he stays in the UFC because there are still some very fun and competitive fights that we could see of his. Imagine him against Chito Vera. Like, that's a fucking fight that I want to see. That is something I would love to see as well. So give us 5 rounds of that. Fight night main event, co-main event, possibly for a title down the line. Sign me up. I'd be ready to go for that as well. Quick thoughts on TJ Dillashaw coming into the co-main event with an injured shoulder from way back in April. Apparently popped it out over 20 times over the last 6 months, but still decided to take the fight. Quick thoughts on that, and then we'll just move on to breaking down this card for the folks here.
So there's another one, man. I played the underdog thinking it was good plus money. TJ Dillashaw is going to give us a shot. So clearly I had no idea about it. Now, is that the kind of information you could have really dug into and called some people and spoke to? Like, it didn't seem like anybody knew about it. UFC didn't even know about it. Maybe his like super close inner circle, but he did a really good job of hiding it. And so when you see him get in the cage, right, you spent all this time tape studying what he looks like at his best, what he looks like throwing some dope-ass combination against Renan Barão 8 years ago. He's a different man now, right? The body is reacted in a different way. I was thinking dude's probably on the gear again because physically he looks in awesome shape. The shoulder injury is just something you don't know about. And so, again, I'm not sour grapes about it because I come from like the horse racing world. And what happens is that you watch a horse race the week before, you go to the track, you see the program, oh, that horse is in to go again. You don't know what the fuck he's been up to all week. How did he eat after the race? What was the temperature like? How did he come out of it? Was he eating all of his oats? Is he a little bit sour? Is he a little bit footsore? Did you treat him? Did the vet come in and do his knees? As the betting public, you don't know.
But I haven't even thought about any of those things when it comes to horse racing, but that is the nitty gritty right there. I love it. Continue. Sorry.
Yeah. So it's like if you called the trainer up and you were like, what's the deal? He'd maybe be able to tell you like, yo, this horse had a really good week. He ate everything and he trained awesome. And you know what? Last week, it's just a bad trip. He got caught on the outside. We fixed it. We put an inside line pull. Whatever the case is, you can fix it, right? But the betting public can only go on what they saw the last time. And there's so much that happens in between. So with TJ, it was another unfortunate situation where I was on the wrong side of it. You know, it sucks. I wish I had Aljamain Sterling. But yeah, he went in with one arm and unfortunately got absolutely clowned. People are saying most dominant championship title defense like in a long time. And yeah, dude, it was dominant as fuck against a guy with one arm. You know what I mean? Like,
I can't believe that was even brought up.
I know, hilarious, right? Dominating to do with one arm. It's tough to watch, but at the same time, like it is gambling. So I hate to give that reminder to anybody because like I'm nobody's dad, but it's like don't bet what you can't afford to lose, right? Because these little circumstances of you think that this guy's going to win. This is an excellent angle. You've got a great mark on, and the guy comes in and he injured his foot fight week. He tore his meniscus. His dog died. His wife left him. Kid's sick, and now it's been rubbing off on him. You know, the weight cut's no good, and he pissed himself. Like, it's like, yeah, I don't know, man. Unless you're with them, it's hard to really be like, I know this guy's 100%. And even if you were a journalist and stuff, if you were the guy that was calling up and finding out how people were and then reporting this information to be like, dude, TJ's got one arm and swinging the market, you'd be a scumbag. You'd be looked like as a scumbag. People wouldn't like you, right? So I don't know. What was I supposed to do? I walked into a bad one there. This is a dirty looking card we're about to break down right now. But again, it's just a game of balances. So you got to be in it to win it. We'll put our best foot forward. And there's actually a couple decent spots, and I'm not just trying to prop up the propping you up show, but on a prop standpoint, there's a couple little nuggets me really like. So let's jump into and get a fresh slate going.
Exactly. All right, let's get into this first fight of the night. It is between Christian Rodriguez, who's going to be making his second trip to the octagon. But first, with the full training camp as well as a new training camp as well, he's going up against short notice replacement Joshua Weems, who is a former Contender Series alum. He ended up losing that fight to Fernie Garcia. Had to pick up a couple wins on the regional scene before he got noticed. And now here he is taking an opportunity of a lifetime to step in and make his UFC debut. But I think the odds are very indicative of how this fight will likely go. We got minus 380 on C-Rod, Christian Rodriguez, and plus 310 the return on Joshua Weems. Now, I've been big on Christian Rodriguez in the past. You know, he got a very stiff test in his first fight against Jonathan Pierce on short notice, up a weight class, and he still made Jonathan Pierce work very hard in that fight. I knew everybody and their mother seemed to be on Jonathan Pierce inside the distance on that fight because of the size discrepancy and the grappling discrepancy that was going to be showcased there. But Rodriguez showed that this guy is a dog, man. He made it a very tough fight for Jonathan Pierce to get his hand raised. Obviously, Pierce still ends up winning that fight, but we saw what kind of fighter Christian Rodriguez is made of. Now, Rodriguez did actually beat Reyes Cortez, who was Tracy Cortez's brother, on the Contender Series. Unfortunately, the man missed weight on the Contender Series, and that's a big fat no-no unless your name is Jake Headley, right? That guy's fighting next weekend. But of course, if you miss weight on the Contender Series, more than likely you've already shot yourself in the foot, no matter what you do and go out there and how you get the victory, especially the way that Rodriguez did. But the UFC saw the potential in this kid just as I do, and they still brought this guy back even after getting just one win after that Contender Series fight. Took their opportunity on short notice, like I said, against GSP, gets the UFC contract, and now here he is, finally being able to showcase what he looks like at his best. Now, he used to train at Rufus Sport. And I don't know if you know the ins and outs, Cody, of what happened over there at Rufus Sport. Maybe you can touch on that on your quick little breakdown here. But that team seems to be disbanded now. I mean, Gerald Mearshot's at a new training camp. Jared Gordon, I keep forgetting. Flash Gordon keeps changing where he's training at as well. Anthony Pettis obviously down in Las Vegas now as well. But Christian Rodriguez was one of those guys that had to pick up his bags and move camp because nothing is really going on over there in Milwaukee nowadays. So he decided to go to the gym that he faced 2 out of his last 3 times, and that's Fight Ready. He went down there to Arizona, and I couldn't think of a better spot for a guy with this type of talent to go and try to even get better and progress his career and progress his skill set to the extent that I believe that he could be a possible top 5 to 7 guy over the next couple of years. Great striking, good understanding of distance, solid takedown defense as well. And although it didn't really show in the Jonathan Pierce fight, when he starts fighting guys that are his size, it will definitely showcase in that aspect. And then he has some good power in his hands as well. I think he has Joshua Weems pretty much beat everywhere. I really think that Weems is going to be one of those guys that goes 0-3 in the UFC and gets cut pretty quickly. The guy, even in his last couple wins, he's getting controlled for the most of these fights, and then he just pulls out a submission out of his ass, armbar in one of them, guillotine choke against the former hype train Mo Miller as well. But I just don't think that this guy really has what it takes to cut it. If you get it knocked out by Fernie Garcia, Christian Rodriguez will likely be putting a worse beating on you as well. So the way I'm going to be looking to tackle this, I don't mind parlaying Christian Rodriguez up at that line that he's currently at because I think he's more than deserving of it. But even Rodriguez by KO at plus 120, I think that is a phenomenal line here to take advantage of. I think we get a shellacking to start off the card here, Cody. What are you thinking? Am I too high on C-Rod, or does Weems pull off the upside here? And you are muted, my friend. Great start to the card. I love it.
Yeah, my bad. Sorry. No, I don't think you're too high on him. But again, money line minus 400. It seems like everybody's kind of on that appropriate level of I like me some Christian Rodriguez. One of the few guys that you lose your UFC debut, but your stock just rises big time. Took the fight on short notice, as you mentioned, against a legitimate contender and a guy like Jonathan Pierce. And yeah, I mean, takedown defense kind of failed him, but didn't take a whole lot of damage on the ground, continuously made him work. When he was standing, very dynamic with his striking game, able to clip him, able to hurt him, almost has him out at the end of the second, live as hell in the third. Unfortunately, he started to tire out as well a little bit. So 24 years old, or very young prospect. I think he's going to be getting continuously better. I think he's going to come in with a lot better cardio. He's got the striking advantage. I think his takedown defense will have improved a little bit, but good enough here in this Joshua Weems situation to keep the fight standing and then box him up. And for Weems, yeah, I mean, I'm not super high on him personally. As I was talking to Paul Shaughnessy, name one guy on the roster, on the UFC roster right now actively that has bare knuckle boxing under their experience. None. Why? Because they're all serious martial artists, right? Bare knuckle boxing is for the guys that leave the UFC, are on the decline of their career. But that's Weems, dude. He's just a fighter. Like he shows up, he does his thing. It's raw, it's rugged. He's done a little bare knuckle boxing. He's done a little pro boxing. He's even done bare knuckle MMA. But ultimately, he's on a couple fight winning streak. They need somebody short notice. He's ready. He's willing to go, and they're throwing him in there. If you look at his last couple of losses, you mentioned the Fernie Garcia fight in the Contender Series, knocked out in 2 minutes. Prior to that, he had taken a pro boxing match, knocked out, a minute into the second round. And I believe his other pro career loss, or maybe his first career pro loss, again, by knockout, right? So I think he probably does have some durability issues, and I feel like Christian Rodriguez is going to capitalize, take advantage, knock him out. Plus 120 Rodriguez by TKO. That's what I went with. To touch your point really quick about Rufus Sport, and I don't wish them ill will because I've shit on Rufus Sport for a very long time, right? But that's actually just kind of the way it goes in MMA, man. Everybody takes their run, and then eventually it falls apart. If you look at who was probably the best camp, oh well, it used to be the Gracies. That's the original camp, and like, what have they produced? Nothing, because time went on. And then after that, it was like, oh, dude, well, what about like the Lion's Den, Ken Shamrock's crew, maybe even Team Punishment, but probably the Lion's Den. That was like a mega gym. And it's like, yeah, literally everybody lost relevance. The gym's not even a real thing. It's just like, okay, well, what were the other like big mega gyms? Militich Fighting System, dude. They produced so many champions. They had they have Tim Sylvia. They got Jens Pulver. You got Jeremy Horn in the gym. You got Matt Hughes in the gym. You got just guys that are going there to get rounds in. It's a mega gym. And then literally just disbanded into nothing. Team Quest, Randy Couture, Matt Linlin, Dan Couture, or Dan Henderson. It's a mega gym. Everybody's out of there. Completely disbanded into nothingness. So now a lot of people are probably sitting there thinking like, I don't know what the fuck he's talking about because they don't even heard of any of those gyms. So what were like the gyms that were big when you got into it? Well, people might think to themselves, well, like Jackson Wink and like TriStar. It's like, bro, fucking dead. They're dead. It's a come and go. SBG Ireland, it's a come and go. You have that one big star, George St. Pierre for TriStar, Conor McGregor for SBG Ireland. You know, the one maybe a John Jones or something for Jackson Wink. And people go there, it becomes a destination gym. They get rounds in, but eventually, like, cream to the creme. Where are your coaches? Who are your guys? Who are the training partners? What's the drama like? And all the guys that left Jackson Wink were like, fuck this place, man. The shithole. Nobody's getting along. Everybody's fighting. Not what it used to be. TriStar, no knock on them, but it's just like just nobody goes there anymore. Maybe Arnold Allen. We'll talk about him in the main event. He's like their last hurrah. Like they don't really got a whole lot going for them, and that's why I got a ton of respect for like American Top Team or American Kickboxing Academy because like these gyms have been kicking it since like 2001, and yet they're still there. They're still churning out, if not champions, top level fighters that are competing in various weight classes. They've got a development program where you recruit people and you build them, right? They had an international thing. They do it right. And so that's why I always say, like, you want to probably go to this. And Extreme Couture has been around a long time too. Syndicate seems to be kicking some serious ass, but the common thread seems like you probably want to be in Las Vegas or South Florida or Arizona. I think Arizona is a hotbed and people just haven't figured it out yet, right? But not saying you can't win some fights, not saying you can't have that early success. It's like that long term, I want to be as good as I can possibly be would probably require you to step out of your comfort zone. And looking at Bilal Muhammad, a Rufus Sport guy, look how good he looked this past weekend because he's one of those guys, as you brought up, that branched out, right? And Duke Rufus may be set in his ways that he's a striker. He was always a striker. His brother Rick was like the fucking man, right? So I think that's going to be in the back of your head where it's like striking wins fights. Striking wins fights. Best coach that I ever knew was a jiu-jitsu wins fights guy. But he'd be like, bro, you don't need any striking. It's like, well, what about your wrestling? You don't need that either. It's like, what do you mean? It's just like, if you have really good jiu-jitsu, you'll just win. It's like, yeah, but dude, what about the other elements of MMA? It's like, bro, it doesn't matter. If you have really good jiu-jitsu, you'll win. And then like he'd point out a lot of examples, sure, but as you and I know, the highest level, eventually you're going to get Mackenzie Dern. Eventually it's like, I can't get the fight to the ground and I can't strike with his opponent. I'm going to get boxed up. It just happens, right? To be the best martial artist, to have all of the skill sets, all the facets that make you an excellent martial artist, bro, that's incredible. How could you do it all? How could you do it all and have a hell of a chin and have a hell of a heart? And have two knees that can handle the constant grind and pressure. Like you need to be the perfect, well-rounded person. So they're few and far between, and that's why you got to admire guys that kind of get to that level.
Yeah, exactly. Even like a perfect example would also be like Edwin Shabazian and Ronda Rousey. The guy got, a lightning in a bottle essentially there. And we did have a couple guys that went over to that gym, but the experiment really didn't work out. It depends on the fighter, depends on the coach, depends on the timing of everything as well. And I guess it's no longer Duke Rufus's time either.
I would say I've been pretty adamant on this. Is like people are always like, bro, I don't like gym jumpers. Man, where's the loyalty? Martial arts is about. And listen, dude, I agree to a certain extent, right? I think you can find a world-class coach in any gym in the world. I think you can walk into your mom and pop place down the street and get an actual world-class coach. I truly believe that. Thing is, they don't get no fucking bodies for you, right? That's the problem. The problem is you need people like-minded, your size, different styles, different body types, constant motivation, grind. That's what those little gyms don't have. So if you were in a position that you could take your coach from your small little gym and take him with you and go to American Top Team. That would be the best. That would be where it's like, okay, but because there's no money at the regional show level, some coach is like, listen, I got to run my thing here. I got a wife and kid. I can't leave with you to go places. But like a Valentina Shevchenko, you know what I mean? Like if you can just afford to have your coach come with you wherever, right? That's your coach, but I'm going to go to different camps to get different looks and different styles and different bodies. Perfect, right? Be loyal to your coach, right? Be loyal to your gym. I'm not saying you have to be a gym jumper. I'm saying like the bodies are going to be required at a certain time. You can't replicate that.
Yep. All right, let's get to this next matchup here. We're going to be talking about a flyweight bout between Cody Durden and short notice replacement Carlos Mota. Now, Carlos Mota is a minus 165 favorite. He actually opened up as a plus 125 dog, a ton of money raining in on him immediately. And like I said, now he's up to that minus 165, minus 170 range. Cody Durden coming back at plus 140. Now, I've been hearing about this Carlos Mota kid for a long time. The guy's been pounding his chest and roaring as much as he can, trying to get the attention of the these big leagues, specifically the UFC. Obviously, he fell short against Charles Johnson in a fight of the year contender, if I'm being honest. A fight that was several months back before Charles Johnson eventually got his call up to the UFC. That was for the flyweight LFA title, and it was a great fight, back and forth pretty much for about 20-ish minutes until Charles Johnson proved to be a little bit too much for Carlos Mota, proved to have a little bit too much cardio for Carlos Mota in a 5-round fight of that pace, and Charles Johnson was able to put him out and get the victory that night. Luckily for Carlos Mota, this is only a 3-round fight, and although it's a short notice spot, he strikes me as one of those guys that is ready no matter what. Like the amount that he's been pounding his chest and actually wants to get in there and fight, whether it's fucking tomorrow or whether it's 3 weeks from now. This guy's ready to go pretty much at any moment. And Carlos Mota is that guy. So I think that this is a good matchup for him, right? He's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. I think he's the superior striker here as well. And I think given the fact that he likely was ready for a matchup like this, we don't have to worry about the short notice nature of this matchup at all. Cody Durden, when he's at his best, we know he utilizes his grappling very well. His striking is starting to come along as well, too. Obviously, we saw him go out there and knock out JP Bays in his last matchup. Big win for him there. But I do think that this matchup, the last win was when he knocked out JP Bays. But this matchup against Carlos Mota, I think that he might be a little bit too outgunned on the feet. Then he might start going for his takedowns. And then from there, I think he might find himself getting wrapped up in a choke or even having to struggle to keep a guy like Carlos Mota down. I think Mota will be able to reverse or get back to his feet or lock up a submission. Regardless, whatever it is, I think he'll eventually get back into that striking realm. And then from there, I think Mota will be able to find that chin of Cody Durden and put him down and out. So I don't mind the money line already on Mota at minus 165, but Mota by knockout around that plus 130 range, I don't mind that either. I could see him possibly locking up a submission, but that's all the way up at plus 1100, which I think is absolutely crazy for a guy with the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. That kind of just caught me off guard. Cody, I hadn't seen the submission line was so wide, but holy shit, I might have to take a little bit of a sprinkle on that. But I do think that we'll see Mota finish Durden one way or another. Give that submission prop a little bit of a sprinkle. But just to be on the safe side, I guess Mota inside the distance, plus 120, not that far off from the knockout line. So might as well just take that. What are you thinking here?
Yeah, well, to double down on that, he's 27 years old and he's a BJJ black belt. So it's not as if he has no shot of pulling it off. It just, when you watch tape on him, it looks like standing and striking seems to be his favor. Nasty left hook on him. I would think that he also hits Cody Durden with something and topples him over. But Durden's got an okay chin. Like I feel like the Richie Lang fight proved that he can get into a bit of a slugfest, but he always relies on that wrestling. Physically, he might be stronger than Mota. I think he'll have early success with the wrestling. But I feel like if he goes in with the game plan of strictly putting that grind on him through the first 5 minutes, he's going to tire out. Once he tires out, as you've seen in some of his fights, the wrestling don't come as easy. He ends up getting clipped. But I favored the Mota by knockout at plus 130 to plus 150 range. The submission, again, it's such a big price. It's possible because not only could he just catch him with a clean submission, but also, like, the way Durden loses sometimes is he gets hit and then he gets submitted. You know, the Jimmy Flick fight, whatever, it's a flying triangle choke, shit happens. But damn, dude, you got caught by a flying triangle. Not a whole lot of the guys in the UFC can claim that for themselves. But then the Makayev fight, same thing. You know, flying knee is what rocks him. Now that he's rocked, he gives up a bad position. Now that he's in a bad position, he gets caught in a guillotine choke. Then he gets submitted, right? So If Mota can maybe go out there and hurt him, drop him, cause him to put his neck in a bad position and capitalize on it, maybe that submission is totally live. So probably the best way of looking at it, my book actually hasn't opened it officially, but the inside the distance, I would say just taking Mota inside the distance and hoping he hits him with something. I was interested in the over 1.5 originally, thinking Durden would look to wrestle early, slow it down, get caught somewhere late in the second or into the third. But at minus 170 for that over 1.5, there's not a whole lot there. So I think the best prop would be either get greedy and go with the submission on Mota, take the knockout by Mota and play it a little safer, or the safest route would be the inside the distance prop.
Yeah, fight doesn't go to decision. Currently sitting around minus 190. I like that, especially considering how much chaos will likely take place in this matchup. All right, let's move on to the next fight here. Let's talk about a featherweight bout between Chase Hooper and Steve Garcia. We got minus 295 on the young gun, Chase Hooper, and plus 245 the return on the aforementioned Jackson Wink product. Steve Garcia, one of the few guys that are still left there and repping it to the fullest. I always get a little bit queasy. Excuse me, whenever I see Chase Hooper as such a big favorite, right? Like it just doesn't sit right with me for some reason. He's 23 years old. He hasn't really developed that man strength yet, as a lot of people like to call it, right? His jiu-jitsu is amazing. Don't get me wrong. When he gets guys into these certain positions, it's very tough to get him off of you. As we saw in the Felipe Colares fight, this guy really has that grit and that durability as well that can help him late in fights. In the Peter Barrett fight, he was losing that fight pretty much until he managed to pull off the submission late in that fight. In the Felipe Colares fight, very back and forth fight, but he was getting the better of Colares, and then eventually TKO'd him at the ending of that fight, showcasing his cardio and his drive to win, essentially. Here against Garcia seems to have decent enough takedown defense to likely keep this fight upright, but it's the Luis Pena fight that kind of tickles me the most, and the fact that Luis Pena didn't land a single takedown in that matchup, but still controlled that fight for over 14 minutes because he was able to get the back of Steve Garcia, and then from there he either just tripped him, jumped on his back, Steve Garcia fell to his back, whatever it was, but Luis Pena was on his back for probably 13 out of those 14 minutes of control time. And I think that Chase Hooper does a decent enough job of like chaining his takedowns into that back take. And I think he could do that here against Steve Garcia. But I think he's a little bit more potent of a finisher as well than Luis Pena, which is why I don't mind that plus 210-ish line that we're getting on Chase Hooper to win by submission. Actually, it seems like there is significant action that came in on it because it opened up plus 250. Now it's actually down to plus 140, plus 170 on most spots. Still plus money, still likely his best path to victory in this matchup where he has a clear grappling advantage over a guy like Steve Garcia. That's what I'm feeling. Maybe even the under 2.5 because, Garcia will likely get out grappled in this matchup. But should this fight take place at all in the striking realm for an extended period of time, he has big enough power in his hands that he could potentially clip Chase Hooper and put him down as well. But I tried coming up with some sort of reasoning, some sort of logic to try to take that plus 245 on Steve Garcia. I just can't. I really can't. The guy has a knockout opportunity. That's about it. I think Cooper is going to nullify the majority of that by clinching onto him, getting him to the ground, whether it's with a trip, a guard pull, whatever it might be. But I think at a certain point, Hooper is going to be able to get that jiu-jitsu going. And I think he'll be able to wrap up a submission as well. So I'll definitely be betting that Hooper by submission, whether it's plus 140, whether it's plus 170, plus money on his best path to victory in this matchup. Sign me the hell up. I'm going to go Chase Hooper submission. What are you thinking here, Cody?
I got Chase Hooper. I think he absolutely dusts him. I know the money line's big because it is Chase Hooper and everybody is a little bit hesitant, but I think the UFC knows exactly what they're doing in setting up this matchup, and I feel like this is a good spot for him to come and shine. So first of all, let's talk about Chase Hooper. Let's talk about why he's really not all that bad. So he was originally the youngest guy in UFC history. Everyone's talking about Rosa Jr., being this whiz kid 17 and a half, but Chase Hooper once upon a time was that kid. Not that he's nearly as good as this Mexican phenom, but the same thing, 17 and a half years old. Why is he even on the Contender Series, right? Gets a developmental deal, and you see that he's really not all that good, comes to the UFC, and they give him like a pretty stiff work rate. I mean, he fights some decent guys, but they've got him competing fairly frequently. He's 3 fights into his career, a UFC run, and wins his debut against Daniel Tamor. His second fight in the UFC is against Bruce Leroy. What? Bruce Leroy, BJJ black belt. He's got 20 plus fights for the organization. He's been like one of the most longest tenured guy. Big striking advantage, big wrestling advantage. Why would you get this matchup? And still Hooper like showed that he was a fighter that night. He got absolutely boxed up, hit well over 100 times significantly, got a couple decent positions, just couldn't hold them, but stuck with it. And it was like everyone laughed at him, became this big meme, but it was like, yeah, this kid showed he's got some heart, and he's still so young. So the Pete Barrett fight, man, he looked off for the first 2 rounds. Gets a little bit of resolve and gets that knee bar in the third. Saves himself. You know, again, he's falling into meme territory. Man, this guy's really not that good. They book him with Steve Peterson. When I seen the Steve Peterson fight and he loses, that's the best he had ever looked at that point. He's continuously getting better. He got 3 takedowns over Peterson. His striking looked improved. Unfortunately, he loses. Now the UFC does the kid a huge favor at that point. They were booking him like every 6 months. They're like, you know what? Take a full year off. Take a full year off. Go train, get better, come back. Still young. Comes back and they give him Felipe Corrales. Now, first of all, at weigh-ins, Chase Hooper looks as good as he's ever looked. He's big for 145, man. He has a big, long, rangy frame. Thing is, he's that geeky Michael Cera nerd type. He really hasn't filled into it. He's got mad leverage. He's got an excellent ability to get to the back, and he's going to start filling out. Against Felipe Corrales, I thought he did. Now, Corrales, not that good. But what's he do better than anything? Takes damage. This guy can take some blows to the head. And Chase Hooper absolutely dominated. Not only did he dominate him on the ground, his striking looked vastly improved. Physically, he looked better. Mentally, he looked better. His cardio looked vastly improved as well. And I just thought he dominated him, man. He dominated him right throughout, where it was like, dude, is Chase Hooper going to TKO this guy? Nobody else has been able to. He's made a career on his durability. And yeah, absolutely. Because when you take a guy's back, you just tire him out. You end up on top. And it's that constant workflow. Eventually, the referee is going to step in and intervene. That was a career best win for him. And I'm expecting him to get better. He's just not elite. Don't throw him in against elite competition. Match him up soft. Let him improve. Let him develop. Do all those things. And I think that's what they're trying to do here, right? So I think winnable fight for him. And I really do think, whereas people are going to think submission. Chase Hooper's a one-dimensional submission guy. He's going to go for the submission. See, not so true. In the last fight with Corrales can grapple a little bit. So as a result, screw the submission. I'm just going to smash him ground and pound. I think the kid's got a chip on his shoulder. He's got something to prove. Yeah, he's a BJJ guy. Everybody knows he's a BJJ guy. Doesn't got hands. He's a BJJ guy. So when you get on top of a guy, do you want to just go for that submission? You want to fucking smash this guy with elbows. Smash him with hammer fist. Hurt him. Make a statement. And he's been going with that. Now, Steve Garcia, he can actually defend submissions fairly okay, right? You mentioned the Luis Pena fight. Got to do it on his back for 13 minutes. Fights hands the entire time. What Steve Garcia don't got is a good chin, man. His last 2 fights, he's looked way off. Charlie Ontiveros, a nick away from putting this dude away, which would have been an abysmal loss to have on your record in the UFC. And, you know, he overcomes and he gets on top of him, falls on top of him, and he's able to put him away. The next fight with Mahashat, I had to rewatch it a few times because at first glance, it looks like Marcin Prachnio versus Sam Alvey. No defense, hands down, marching forward, dropped, gets up and walks right into the second shot. Like, holy shit, dog. I think his chin's compromised. As you mentioned with the Pena fight, Pena continuously gets to his back. I feel like Hooper's going to get to his back. He's going to damage him. It's going to look like the Corrales fight, but it won't take 3 rounds. Probably get him out of there sometime maybe late in the first, late into the second. And when I look at that Hooper by TKO props, like 475, it's like it looks really good. Now, anyways, that's my piece about Chase Hooper. Here's my bit about Steve Garcia. You gotta wait to see this guy in the weight on the scales, dog.
Yeah.
Because he's got a history of not making weight, pretty much any weight class. I won't waste too much of your time, but go back to like his right before the Abel Cullum fight. Okay, it's at 135. Who knows if he makes the weight? It says he does. The next fight with Andrew Whitney, who's Tita Torres' ex-boyfriend.
Wow.
Yeah, no. ACT guy.
Look at this guy, fucking all the gossip. He's got it all.
Well, the thing with Andrew Whitney was like he was her last boyfriend before she switched teams. So it's like, dude, you ruined it for everybody, Whitney.
How dare you?
He fights him at 140. So he goes 35, he goes to 40, okay? Then he gets on Dana White's Contender Series against Desmond Torres, where he blows the 35 limit coming in at 139.5. So he wins against Desmond Torres by first-round knockout, but Daddy Dana don't like missing weight. So as a result, Steve Garcia don't get the contract. His next fight with Jose Mariscal is at 145. So he just missed weight on Contender Series at 35, coming in at 39. Next fight's booked at 45 against Mariscal, and he comes in at 47.4. So blows the featherweight limit. Now he debuts against Luis Pena at 155. The fight with Charlie Ontiveros is at 155. The fight with Mahashat, was at 155. This fight with Hooper is back at 45. So first of all, he hasn't fought at 45 in almost 3 years since he's fought at 145 pounds. And he didn't make weight that last time he fought at 145. So, I mean, yeah, you got to go back like 3 or 4 years before he made weight here. I don't think he cuts weight particularly well. He's still only 30, so I'm not suggesting that like his body's shot or anything, but I don't think he cuts weight particularly well. And now to assume that he's just going to drop down to 45 after 3 years off and not being able to make it the last time, strictly because he realizes he's not big enough to be a 55er, like he's going to zap himself. He's going to zap himself. He'll be drained. Chase Hooper's going to take advantage and get the job done. That's what I'm going with, baby. So I don't want to overplay Hooper this week, but because the card's really soft looking, you got to overextend yourself in a couple spots. And for me, Hooper just, I know I'm going to be more invested than I should be, but I think he's going to look good this weekend.
For anybody wondering what Tisha Torres' ex-boyfriend is up to, he's still on a 5-fight losing streak, which was started by that loss to Steve Garcia. So there you guys go. All right, let's get to this next matchup. Interested to hear your thoughts about this one. This one takes place in the middleweight division. We got Ugly Man Joe Holmes coming in as an underdog here. He's plus 190, minus 225 on the Iron Turtle, Jun Young Park. I'm a big Iron Turtle fan, Cody. I think this guy has a solid skill set. He's pretty much well-versed in every aspect of MMA, from his jiu-jitsu to his striking to the way that he can implement his pressure and his pace against most opponents. I know a lot of people's eyes were opened up to him after he went out there and defeated Tafon and Chukwi, who at that point in time seemed to be an unstoppable force. But Junior Park utilized a great combination of pressure, pace, and takedowns and striking in that fight to pick up the victory there. And I think that we continue to see that throughout his career. If we go back and watch the Gregory Rodriguez fight, you wouldn't really believe me when I said that Jun Young Park is a cardio freak, because he ultimately started to slow down and got finished by Gregory Rodriguez there. But this man threw the kitchen sink at Gregory Rodriguez, and Brazak was still there and throwing haymakers in return, and ultimately he was able to land that final blow to get Jun Young Park out of there. But I still think that Park has a lot to offer in this middleweight division, given the way that he fights most of his matchups. He's only 31 years old. He'll be turning 32 in February. He's coming off a greasy split decision over Eric Anders last time around, but still showcased why he's one of these guys that we really need to take seriously. Personally, I think he's taking a step down in competition here in Joseph Holmes, who did manage to bounce back after getting upset by Jamie Pickett a couple fights back. He did pick up the win against everybody's darling, Alan Abadovsky. Very easy win for him there. But now he's taking a significant step up in competition once again against Jun Young Park. And I just don't know if he's going to be able to keep up with that pace and pressure that the Korean puts on most of his opponents. Holmes, he uses a lot of his physical attributes, his athleticism. That's pretty much why he's gotten as far as he has in his MMA career, in my opinion, until he met a guy that can match him in that athleticism and possibly beat him in experience, which we got in Jamie Pickett a couple fights back. But now you're getting a guy in Jun Young Park who has all the tools to beat a guy like Joseph Holmes. He will be able to overcome those physical advantages that Joseph Holmes may have. Sure, Joseph might be live early in this fight to possibly get a finish of some sort, but I think that Park will survive that early onslaught, really put the pressure on Holmes, and possibly finish him later on in this matchup. So, you know me, Cody, whenever I see any hint of a possible cardio issue, I'm going to start to jump on it. Jun Young Park to win in round 3, plus 1,100 or plus 1,300, depending on the book that you have access to. Park to win inside the distance is around plus 200, and I'm still struggling whether he will get a submission, which he has 3 on his record, or a KO, which he has 5 on his record. But we're still getting a good enough price tag on him to win inside the distance at plus 200 that we could just take that and maybe a sprinkle on that round 3 prop as well. Like I said, around plus 1,100. And I think that's the best way we can try to turn this minus 230, minus 225 favorite into some plus money. I think by taking him inside the distance is the best way to do so. Am I too high on Park here, Cody? What are you feeling with this matchup?
No, I don't think you're too high on him. It's just like, the inside the distance, I'd love to see it, but he's like the only dude that ever went the distance with John Phillips. So, like, is he a finisher? He doesn't finish anybody. Doesn't finish nobody. Now, that being said, He almost had Gregory Rodriguez legitimately out of there. Rodriguez is done on his back foot, waiting to get killed and put away. And Park decides to go ahead on his shield in a fight he otherwise could have won. So yeah, I think Iron Turtle's got some pop in his hands. The fight with Holmes is just, it's going to be ugly. It's going to be an ugly fight. Could get into the later rounds, like you said. Maybe he's live for that third round finish. But yeah, Park, I'm not so sure. Starts off his UFC run. He's, putting some decent wins together. As we mentioned, the Phillips fight, beat Marc-Andre Barriault, beat Tafon and Jacoby, the Rodriguez fight. But that last fight with Eric Anders, man, listen, maybe it's a biased opinion, but like straight up, I thought he won the fight. I know it's greasy. Nobody agreed. I took a shellacking on Twitter for suggesting that the right man won, which is Park. But this is why MMA is like not fair in a nutshell. When you look at that fight, let's just look at the stats and rewatch it because the stats reflect exactly how the fight went down. Park outstrikes him 25-16 in the first round. Okay, almost doubles him up, not quite, 25-16 in his favor, but he got control and gives up a takedown. So how does he not win that round? He outstruck him. Okay, the second round he outstrikes him 31-16. Okay, so now he pretty much does double him up in that second round, and yet no MMA pundits score the second round for Park because Eric Anders had some control time and a takedown. And then in the third round, Park he separates. He finally doesn't get clinched up against the cage and give up any takedowns. And he puts a beating on him and outstrikes him 49-33. Okay. So he outstrikes him by a wide margin in every single round. Overall, like 105-69. And yet he lost the fight. In what world did he lose the fight? He came to fight. He's actually fighting. He's hitting the other guy in the face. He's trying to finish. Is that not what this is supposed to be? How come people are giving Eric Anders the first two rounds on the basis of he got takedown, controlled him up against the cage? Yeah, he got outstruck. So I know there's something to be said about like, well, it's volume, but what about the bigger shots? But yeah, bro, Anders is not landing bigger shots. So I don't know. I don't know how you can argue that. But in my mind, I'm going to ride that bias. People maybe don't like Park because they thought he lost the Eric Anders fight, which he didn't. And then the Rodriguez fight, he put himself in a bad spot and got knocked out. Okay, Rodriguez is a top 15 guy. I give him passes on those, man. I say like you say, he's got a decent outside trip. He's got great volume on the ground, although not big finishing power. Good pace. Known as the Iron Turtle because he can take one hell of a punch, although Rodriguez gave him one hell of a punch and he succumbed to it. I think that there's stuff that you could like here. Whereas Holmes seems way too one-dimensional to me. He's known for this like 80-inch reach, 6'4", got some kickboxing, but I'm not seeing the kickboxing. He doesn't seem particularly comfortable in there. In his fight with Jamie Pickett, he gets controlled inside the clinch up against the cage for like the vast majority of it. Doesn't show that physical strength. I will admit, offensively, his jiu-jitsu pretty good. If he ends up on top of Park, he's going to give him some problems. But he doesn't have the wrestling to back it up. He doesn't have the striking to put him down and get on top. I feel like it's going to be a clinch-heavy warfare for the first round, maybe second round, and then Park eventually pulls away and tries to put him off. So this is a greasy fight. I would say that your best path, probably passing on it. But low-key, it's like plus 625 for a Park by TKO. Like, I'd look at that one. I don't think he submits him. I think Holmes' jiu-jitsu is pretty good, and they're going to have a proper game plan coming in. But I think if you can tire him out and grind him down and get him in that same position that Eric Anders was in that third round, I think he should be able to put him away, could be able to put him away. And for a massive prop like that, I'd go with that. The inside the distance at plus 200, not as appealing, but still 2-1 money, not terrible. But yeah, I'm expecting a greasy fight that could go either way. But the official pick is definitely Park, and I'm going to get a little dangerous with it and take that TKO plus 625.
I don't mind that at all. I like that approach as well. I'm going the cheap way and just taking the inside the distance in case he does manage to, tire him out enough to eventually get that submission. But that is damn juicy as well on that TKO prop. All right, let's get to this next matchup, and it goes down in the heavyweight division. And I don't know about you, Cody, but I think they should have swapped the belt order in terms of the two heavyweight fights we have here. Because how dare you disrespect my man Andre Arlovski, who's coming in as a plus 205 underdog to Marcos Rogerio de Lima, who's minus 245. But these guys deserve the main card spot over Waldo Cortez Acosta and Jared Vandera. Jared Vandera, who's on a 5-fight losing streak. You're going to give that guy a main card slot? Whatever. But in regards to this matchup, this seems like a typical Andre Arlovski type of matchup. He's going up against the middle tier of the heavyweight division. And if you're going to give me a big fat plus 200 on his number, no shit, I'm going to take a shot on that because he can go out there and just implement his game and win these fights. Now, we talk about this every time we have an Arlovski fight on the docket, right? We talk about how 11 years ago, everybody was telling him to hang it up, retire. He's on a 4-fight losing streak, got knocked out in 3 of them. The guy was glass chin. But then he puts together a 10-1 run. His only loss in that span was to Anthony fucking Rumble Johnson. But he's beating everybody else they're putting in front of him, including the couple guys that he fought in the UFC. Now, the fight that derailed that 10-1 run was when he was matched up against Stipe Miocic. And lo and behold, Stipe Miocic earns himself a title shot after beating the Pitbull. And that's when he obviously goes out there and dethrones Fabricio Verdum with the heavyweight fight, or the heavyweight title. But Arlovski again goes on a solid losing streak there. But look at the guys that they're putting him up against, right? That's during that run where he's getting iced by Francis Ngannou. Like, good God, Andre Arlovski, why'd you accept that fight to begin with? Andre Arlovski, Marcin Tybura puts the work on him there. Josh Barnett chokes him out. Alistair Overeem knocks him out. And then obviously Stipe knocks him out as well. But over his last 7 fights, he's 6-1. Like, there are a couple greasy decisions in there, but he's still going out there and showcasing that he can put together, a solid body of work that is appealing enough to the judges. And De Lima, yes, he might be hard to deal with in the first round. We saw it in the Blagoy Ivanov fight, right? He throws big power, big combinations early in fights, but then you see him starting to sweat. You see him start to slow down a little bit. And yes, he still throws in the second and third rounds, and he could even land a takedown like he did against Blagoy in that third round, but there's not as much pop or much threat behind it as there was in that first round. And I think they have Arlovski, if he can handle that early onslaught here from De Lima, he can put together solid enough work in that second and third round to make that plus 200 look mighty good. So yeah, I like Arlovski here, of course. That money line is good enough that we don't even need to bother with props. But if I were to give you guys a prop, there's only one way Arlovski wins nowadays, Cody, and we all know that is via decision. That's currently sitting at plus 330. That looks mighty juicy to me as well. I'm going to go Arlovski decision here, but a De Lima knockout is obviously possible, plus 165. But another live betting opportunity here too, right? If Arlovski survives our early onslaught and he's still anything better than plus 100, go ahead and take a shot on him, because I'd be surprised if De Lima was able to get a finish outside of that first round. But official pick, Arlovski decision, plus 330. Let's run that to the bank. What are you thinking here, Cody?
Yeah, honestly, the fight to go the distance is like even money, minus 125. And yet, if the fight does go to decision, they're going to give it to Andre Arlovski. They do every time. Yeah, sure, he's won.
Poor Jake.
Yeah, poor everybody. Bro, Jake Collier beat his ass. Jared Vandera arguably beat his ass. Tanner Boser definitely beat his ass. And the thing is that he's Andre fucking Arlovski. He's a pit bull. He's your favorite fighter's favorite fighter. And so when you're sitting cage side and you see the guy in action, it's like, yeah, you got to beat the legend to be the legend. And no one's really going out there and beating his ass. Now, he's fought in guys like Chase Sherman is huge volume. If you look at all of Chase Sherman's fights, he's big volume. And yet, he got froze up against Andre Arlovski, got tired, and Andre Arlovski pulled over on the volume game. So, wow, that's crazy, because that doesn't usually happen to Chase Sherman. Carlos Felipe is a straight-up volume guy. Not that good, don't get me wrong, but very high volume for a heavyweight. And when you look at that fight, it's like, damn, he fell behind the 8 ball as well, only landed 73. Jared Vandera, people go back to that Justin Toffa fight, like, hey, do you give this guy 15 full minutes to work with? He'll land well over 100. And again, for the most part, caught staring. Tanner Boser got caught staring. Jake Collier was a close competitive fight. I thought he won. I had a bet, so I definitely thought he won. But the thing is that you're keeping it close and competitive against Andre Arlovski. They're going to edge it to him ever so slightly. So is he winning these fights? I don't know. But if you're close and competitive with him, they're going to give it to him unless you're some big star. And Marcos Rogério de Lima, I'm not that guy. So I just never really been high on him. I thought even at 205, he didn't look like he was in great shape. Comes back to heavyweight, and he's ballooned up all the way to the limit. So physically, huge power puncher. All of his wins in the UFC have basically been by knockout, but he's so inconsistent. And that's marred by his run. If you look at, like, knocks out Igor Prokrayets in 2 minutes. Oh, man, got subbed by Nikita Krylov in 2 minutes. Oh, chokes out Clint Hester in the first round. Oh, gets choked out by Antigulov in the first round. Oh, knocks out Jeremy Kimball in the first round. Oh, gets submitted by St. Preux. He rotated wins and losses for like the vast majority of his career. finally his last time out, finally wins 2, and then fights Blagoy Ivanov. And there's a debate that he actually won that fight as well, but not to be. They gave it to Blagoy. I don't know what to think about him, man. He's got more than enough firepower to knock out Andre Arlovski in that first round, so I would definitely be weary of that. But to me, it's like he's never had cardio. He's a gas bag. His wins are generally when he knocks you out quickly. His fights that go later, he's tired, and his volume falls right off. And if you do that with Andre Arlovski, you're going to be in real trouble. But like, to his credit, because I always shit on him, his last fight with Blagoy Ivanov, his cardio actually looked way better. He was landing shots on Blagoy that 100% fold up Andre Arlovski. To me, the difference is footwork. Blagoy's this tough Bulgarian fighter, stays in your face. He's there to get hit. Dude's got a fucking scar in the middle of his chest from the time he got stabbed in the heart in a Bulgarian nightclub and then spent a month in a coma. Has a win over Fedor Emelianenko in a combat Sambo match. He's tough, rawhide, but he's there to get hit. Whereas like Arlovski has changed his career knowing I should be getting hit anymore. Look how many times I've been knocked out. And as a result, he plays this pitter-patter game to the outside, uses his jab, uses his movement, and just ever so slightly gets more volume. And so I'm really hoping that if this was line reversed, serious temptation to think that Andre Arlovski is going to get clipped. But how many times have you seen Arlovski in a middling heavyweight type fight at plus money come through and cash for you? I'll tell you how many. 6 of the last 7 times. This is what he does. This is his spot. And by decision, as you mentioned, plus 275. That'd be the way to go with it. So the last thing I got to mention is if you look at Rogerio de Lima, a lot of first-round knockouts. What about when he wins fights, but he doesn't knock the guy out in the first round? And then interestingly enough, the Maurice Green fight, it went 15 minutes. He landed 14 significant strikes over Maurice Green over 15 minutes. Okay. Well, what about that Adam Wazorek fight? It went 15. Oh, he lands 28 significant strikes over the course of 15. So, yeah, Andre's proven to be a 70, 80, 90, dare I say 100 significant strikes kind of guy. He's just got to make sure he don't get torched in that first round, and he should be able to stay to the outside and do what he does, crease out a decision. So I got the same play as you, Andre Arlovski by decision plus 275.
Yeah, I just quickly want to shout out my guy MPTV saying if Marcos gets it to the ground, he's good at controlling you. That's how he beats Adam Wizardcheck. That's how he beats Maurice Green, by getting these guys to the ground and just controlling them from on top. But I just don't think those guys have that, that style of Arlovski that's going to make it harder for him to land those takedowns or even control him for extended periods of time.
Yeah, and if I was to counter on that as well, is if you go back and watch the Stefan Struve fight, like 20 seconds into the fight, he drops Struve with an overhand right and then gets right into his guard. Now, from his guard, doesn't do anything, doesn't pass guard, doesn't improve position. Struve doesn't do shit. And yet that round ends and he is flat gassed out, bro. Yeah, he is gassed out. Now the second round starts and Struve literally just falls on top of him and mauls him. Stefan Struve won that.
Oh my God. Did we lose him? I'm going to boot him out of here because I know some of you guys like taking screenshots when it does seize up on him. I'll give him a second here.
Let that shit happen to him.
There we go. He's back. Was
it me? I probably got kicked out because they were like, this guy's getting too fired up.
The last thing we heard was when Stefan Struve fell on top of him and was able to pretty much just, I think it was an arm triangle choke that he got him with and got him out of there, right?
Yeah. So anyways, Struve ends up on top of him. He puts him away pretty easy. But yeah, what I wanted to say is the guy's a BJJ black belt, right? And yet he's got forearm choked by Alexander Romanov. Yes, forearm choked by Alexander Romanov. Not really a position you see a whole lot. He got questionable cardio. He's got questionable, will and desire to actually go through the tough spots. And Arlovski's not going to put him through tough spots. He's just going to hopefully matador him from the outside, chip away. So plus 275 by decision, Arlovski. That's what I'm going with.
Let's go. All right. Prelim headliner here takes place in the middleweight division. We got Roman Steal Your Girl Deleese going up against Phil Hawes. In terms of odds, we got Deleese coming in at plus 145, minus 170 for Phil Hawes. This is the one that I'm probably the most, scratching my head about. Like, I don't really have a strong or convicted take on either side here. I did end up going with the Phil Hawes side. I do think he shows a little bit more of a complete game. Roman Deleese, a little bit of a meathead at times, if we're being honest. He did land multiple takedowns in a couple fights, and he's been able to grind a couple guys out. But I'd be surprised if he's able to go out there and out wrestle a guy like Phil Hawes, who's likely the better grappler on paper here. And then in terms of the striking, I think Phil Hawes has shown solid progression with his striking style, throwing a little bit more in combinations and not really going balls to the wall like we used to see earlier in his career. We're seeing him, manage his gas tank a little bit better over 15 minutes and really just doing a great job of not gassing himself out like he used to back in the day, right? He would either try to get you out of there within the first round, or he would start to slow down and his opponents were able to knock him out. Or Chris Curtis could just take all the kicks and punches and elbows and still keep coming forward and eventually get his own combinations going and knock him out too. So, I think Phil Hawes is likely the better fighter overall here. I do think this one will likely go deep. Like, I do think we'll see it go into maybe the third round at least. The over 2.5 currently sitting around -115. That's the spot that I like the most from a props perspective. But in terms of a fighter and a specific winning method, Phil Hawes by decision +250, that would probably be the way that I go. And if me from 2 years heard me say that at a certain point, I'd probably slap myself in the face. But we know that Phil Hawes has really started to revolutionize his game and really start to become a much better mixed martial artist, winning fights not just by knockout, but just being a little bit more methodical. And if he can do that here against Roman Deleese, I think we can see him put together a much better body of work over 15 minutes and get his hand raised via decision here. The over 2.5 is what I like the most, but in terms of a prediction, I'll go Phil Hawes by decision. You got something more convicted? You got something a little bit stronger than what I'm throwing out there, Cody?
No, I'm not really. If you want to, if your book allowed it anyways, if you can get winning round either side, who cares? Round 3, yeah, I got a feeling it's going down around 3. I feel like they're both going to get dead dog tired, and then it's going to be a matter of who lands that big shot. I'd be inclined to go with you, Phil Hawes. I feel like that's where my heart's leaning. But one thing I never liked about Phil Hawes is, again, when it kind of gets into that territory of like this is becoming a dogfight and he has to face some adversity, he's typically not there for it. Chin, not great. All of his losses, all of his major losses, pretty much always coming inside the distance when he gets caught with something. You mentioned the Chris Curtis fight where he's dominating the first 3.5 minutes of that fight and then all of a sudden gets caught. Interesting. The Duran Win fight. See, Duran Win's not very good, okay? Can't do anything other than wrestle. And then the fight with Phil Hawes wasn't going to be able to wrestle. If you watch that fight back, it looks very much like somebody shadow boxing and hitting a heavy bag in the gym, right? Everything he throws lands, and the heavy bag pretty much throws nothing in return. Duran Win's just there to get hit. Takes a whole bunch of shots, but even he returns fire with a couple 1-2s that actually do hit Phil Hawes, do kind of get his attention. Phil Hawes gasses himself throwing all those strikes. Phil Hawes gasses himself throwing all those elbows. I thought it was a good performance for him, but he faced zero adversity in the slightest bit. So the thing with Roman Deleese is he is one of these big, thick, Georgian guys. It's probably going to take a couple shots and might return fire. If he returns fire, it could be a problem because Phil Hawes doesn't exactly wear that hell of a shot. Now with Roman Deleese, keep in mind, before this guy came to the UFC, he was knocking out pretty much everybody. He does got power. He fought at heavyweight. He fought at light heavyweight. He is kind of a big, thick, set guy. Now when he came to the UFC, he's a dummy, okay? He's looking at his corner saying, "Coach, you want me to submit him?" And then drop him back on a leg lock. Don't drop back on a leg lock. Doesn't work. Stop it. Yeah, making bad decisions. Mostly grappling heavy. Doesn't look like he's got that big power. And then his last fight with Kyle Daukaus, bro, he's a problem. He's a problem, and he's a problem in the clinch, right? If you're going to clinch up with him, he's big, he's strong. He likes to throw that knee up the middle. Same thing he knocked out Kadis Abragimov with. He likes to throw those big elbows. And he dropped Daukaus twice and put him away in less than 2 minutes. It's an impressive enough victory. He is 34 years old, but he's kind of green in MMA. He doesn't have like an extensive record for the most part. He comes from a grappling base, and he's kind of figuring it out as he goes. Full-time in Las Vegas. I believe he trains with Chris Curtis. I think they're going to have a decent game plan together here that if Phil Hawes shoots the takedown, make him work, tire him out. If Phil Hawes keeps this thing standing and uncorks bombs on you, well, Roman Deleese can take a good shot and then get him in the clinch. Get him in the clinch and batter him with something. Now, I don't think I got the cojones to pull out that trigger and go plus 450 Deleese by a KO. But I think it is live. But I got the feeling this fight ain't going the distance, man. Minus 145, minus 135 range. Fight don't go the distance. If Deleese is going to tire out Hawes and take all of his best shots and hurt him in the second or the third, I think he puts him away. If Hawes does come out here as that complete package guy, he should probably put Deleese away, right? Like someone's going to get a savage beating in this one. I'm just thinking the tough, thick Georgian man probably takes a little better damage down the stretch. And with Phil Hawes, it's like, how many times have you seen him dominate and then all of a sudden, oops, makes a mistake, right? Even his fight with Imavov, he wins a decision. He almost gets KO'd twice in the process. He's kind of a defensive liability. And so when you get big favorite status on him, it's kind of always worth a little peek. But I took the coward's way out and said fight doesn't go the distance, minus 130, minus 145 range. And then again, if you can get your book specifically, fight ends in the third round, I think both guys will test each other's wills in the first two, and then they're going to both be tired in the third. Someone's going to topple over.
So we pretty much see it a little bit differently, but still, that just goes to show how kind of difficult this fight is to break down, to truly hammer down a way to approach it. But we both see it either way. So if you guys are seeing it one way or the other, you likely agree with either me or Cody. But good luck on betting this fight. All right, that is a wrap on the prelims. Shout out to everybody that's in the chat right now. Make sure you guys hit that like and subscribe if you haven't already. We're going to take a quick 20-second break just to get a quick word from one of the main sponsors of the show. Then we'll get right back into it with the main card. There you guys go, the All-Star app. Make sure you guys hit that download link below. You guys can either get it on Google Play Store. You guys can get it in the iTunes Store. It is available pretty much for every mobile device. It is one of the best spots that you guys can go out to get your best MMA news, live odds, live stats, all that good stuff. Make sure you guys check it out. I promise you guys will enjoy it. All right, let's get right into this main card. And the first fight that we got kicking it off, we're going to stick with the big boys here, Cody. We got the 205ers, the light heavyweights stepping into the cage. We got Dustin Jacoby coming in as a minus 170 favorite, plus 145 the return on Khalil Roundtree, who's on a solid run right now. He's put together a couple of good wins. Seems to me like his confidence is at an all-time high. Two back-to-back finishes. One of them obviously was that weird side kick to the knee of Modestas Bukauskas. Not only did Bukauskas shred his knee that night, he also got a pink slip from the UFC to be like, peace, we're likely not paying for that knee surgery, but get out of here. We don't really want you in our promotion anymore. And then he goes out there and just walks through Carl Roberson back in March, absolutely destroys him that night, and just showcases this new war horse Khalil Roundtree that we have to start to get used to. He's 32 years old. This has got to be the prime of his career. He's really got to put it together right now. And, getting a 3-fight winning streak going would be very helpful for him in this light heavyweight division, which is still, really getting through that whole Yuri and Glover era, which I believe will hopefully be wrapped up by the end of the year. But he has a stiff test ahead of him, and Dustin Jacoby, who has been one of the cleanest and most disciplined fighters that we have in the light heavyweight division. You're talking about a guy who has been undefeated in MMA, dating all the way back to when he lost against Mohammed the Wall in September of 2014. King Mo, actually, sorry, it was John Salter that beat him last in January of 2015. Obviously, he took an extended hiatus to compete in kickboxing, but since returning to MMA, he's put together, was that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 straight wins. In there, though, is a draw that he had to Ivan Cuitlava. So let's say 9-fight unbeaten streak. But most recently, he's coming off a knockout victory over Da Un Jung, which was a very highly debated fight on social media going into that fight week. But it didn't take long for Dustin Jacoby to get him out of there and record. I believe that was his second finish. Sorry, third finish in the UFC since returning back in 2020. I honestly think it's one of those spots where Dustin Jacoby can showcase his disciplined approach, his good kicks, his good cage movement, his ring generalship, essentially, so that his opponents can't really get much going. And I think that Khalil will slowly start to get frustrated, slowly start whiffing up air more and more, while Dustin Jacoby just chips away at him from distance. I think that Jacoby can stay safe enough from distance, stay away from the big power and the kicks of Khalil Roundtree, and he should be able to take this fight by decision, which currently sits at plus two. Sorry, wow. Jacoby by decision is plus 300. That one kind of stands out to me a lot. You know, that is normally his win condition. He goes out there and just chips away at these guys and likely wins pretty clearly on the judges' scorecards. And I think that's what's going to happen here as well, barring any knockdowns or anything that Khalil might be able to get throughout these 15 minutes. It's going to be a tough one. It's going to be a hard one. But we know for sure that even without a kicking game like he had against Michał Oleksiejczuk, because apparently he went into that fight injured, he still went out there and outstruck a very heavy hitter in Michał Oleksiejczuk. I think he can do the same thing here against Khalil Roundtree. Hopefully he is not injured. Hopefully he can use his leg kicks so he can stay a little bit safer. But I think at plus 300, this is a must-bet spot for Dustin Jacoby via decision, in my opinion. So what are you thinking here, Cody? Do you think Khalil finds that chin or chips away at Jacoby with his leg kicks, or does just Jacoby his way to a decision?
Yeah. I got to go with an underdog shot here and go with Khalil Roundtree. Most interested in seeing the weigh-ins because a motivated Khalil Roundtree is a problem. Now, I'm big on you don't know what the guy is, what we just talked about at the start of the show, like what's the mindset coming in, how are they physically? And Khalil Roundtree is a guy that's kind of battled, I think, personal demons. When he's self-admittedly not in shape coming in and not motivated, he looks awful in these fights. Oh, he look terrible. Gasses out fast, doesn't have anything to fall back on. You know, kickboxing is supposed to be huge and just very, very one-dimensional. When he's motivated and he's in shape, the guy's an absolute problem. That's what you've seen from him in his last two fights. He was on the record saying, moved to Thailand, got my life together, feeling good for Modestas Bukauskas. He looked good, shreds his knee, whatever, it happens. It's a dirty little Kyokushin karate move, but very effective when it does land. And you can't fault him too much because, physically he looked good and his cardio looked good. It's that very next performance where you're seeing, oh, okay, he's really starting to round out himself. Ryan Spann blows right through him. Another fellow kickboxer, but I feel like Khalil Roundtree's in a good place right now. Now, you talked about the fact 32 years old, prime of his life, spends time in Thailand and Las Vegas, and I really do feel like he's coming into his own. Might be primed for that upset over Dustin Jacoby. Now, a lot of people have talked about, wow, if it's going to be a kickboxing battle, why would you go with Dustin Jacoby? Cleaner technique, former Glory kickboxing standout. All fair points, all fair points. Also all fair points when Gokhan Saki had fought Khalil Roundtree once upon a time. It's kickboxing, bro. Do you really want to stand in front of a guy named Warhorse and throw down? Because if he's motivated and in shape, he's going to oblige you, and it's going to be a problem. Eric Anders has never been the same since that fight. Yeah, he survived a decision. He got dropped 6 times. It was a brutal beatdown of epic proportions. You see what Khalil Roundtree is possible when he's motivated and in shape. So that's kind of what I'm leaning towards here. Justin Jacoby's on an incredible run, man. Really is, right? So let's just play devil's advocate and kind of be a bit of a dick about it, right? Last fight against Dong Jung, knocks him out quick. Okay, sure. Can't take away much from that. He clipped him. Justin Jacoby's a fine striker. One fight prior versus Michał Oleksiejczuk, okay? First round, he loses. He gets outstruck pretty clean by Lord Michael Michał Oleksiejczuk, right? Loses the first. Lord Michał tires, as he tends to do, and Justin Jacoby wins the second and the third round. Justin Jacoby hurts his leg in that fight, throws almost no leg kicks, has zero movement, right? Barely squeaks by, wins the fight 29-28, but looked like shit and admitted afterwards, yo, I was hurt. That's a bad sign. One fight prior against John Allen, wins the first 2 rounds on 2 of the 3 judges' scorecards, lost the third round to John Allen, which was way more competitive. His fight with Ion Cutelaba, he grabbed the fence about 3 times in the first round and still proceeded to get thrashed and lost a 10-8 round against Ion. But Ion tired. Oh, damn. One fight prior, Maxim Grishin dropped twice in the fight with Maxim Grishin. All types of hurt and robbed him on the judges' scorecards. So, yeah, dude, it's a dope-ass winning streak because he's winning fights, but it's also I don't know, man. You're squeaking out at a lot of these. There's a lot of bad spots. You can see that he can get beat to the punch. You can see he can get hurt. You can see his body starting to wear the rigors of, a couple decade-long fighting career, kickboxing and MMA and trying in the ground game. It feels like someone's going to be primed for the taking to capitalize and catch this guy with something. And I feel like Roundtree might be that guy. So, again, this is a greasy card. Some greasy underdogs going to come through. I don't mind Khalil Roundtree. Further to that point, if Khalil's going to win, probably by knockout, right? Plus 265. That was the route I decided to take.
All right, there you guys go. I do see the approach that you're taking as well, and I do agree with a lot of the points there as well. Let's see what kind of Khalil Roundtree that we get. One at the weigh-ins, and then obviously once he actually steps inside the cage, because man, if he comes out motivated like he has been over his last couple fights, it's going to be a long night or even a short night actually for Dustin Jacoby. Should Khalil Roundtree be on? All right, let's get to this next matchup. It's going to be taking place in the middleweight division. We got 3-2 Trishan Gore coming in as a plus 130 dog. He's going up against Josh Fremd, who is a minus 150 favorite. Now, funny enough, this is going to be the second straight time that Trishan Gore is going up against Factory X MMA and Muay Thai. And I'm interested to see what that team is looking to take from their fight when Cody Brundage starts Trishan Gore a couple months back, and what they're going to try to apply, or how they're going to try to apply it with a guy like Josh Fremd. Now, that fight with Cody Brundage and Trishan Gore, I had a ticket on Trishan Gore that night, and I was so happy that he was defending all those takedown attempts that were coming from Cody, and then Cody the rest of the time was just backpedaling, huffing and puffing, looking like it was just a matter of time before Trishan Gore landed that big knockout, or was able to find a big shot to drop Cody Brundage on his ass and knock him out there. But Cody Brundage was the one that ended up landing a big, I believe it was a right hook that landed on the chin of Trishan Gore, drops him. He jumps into full mount, ground and pounds him, and eventually turns his lights off and gets the win that way. So big win for Cody Brundage. But, maybe a learning experience for Trishan Gore in terms of maybe going into that fight a little bit too confident, right? If you guys remember his demeanor going into the Brian Battle fight, he had an interview where he said he wanted to be a double champ very soon. I'm like, dog, you have less than 5 fights. Pump the brakes. You got a tough test and Brian Battle ahead of you. And that's what exactly happened that night. Brian Battle cashed as an underdog for a lot of people that night, including myself. But I think that was a learning lesson, as well as that Cody Brundage fight. Now he's 3-2, only has 5 professional MMA fights. Obviously, he made it to the finale of the Ultimate Fighter, was not able to compete against Brian Battle. I believe it was one of the Urbina brothers that stepped in from that fight. But he did get his chance to fight Brian Battle again, came up short. But he still shows some good things, man. His hand speed, his power, it's all still there. His takedown defense, it's still there. I'm just wondering whether he has to dial it in mentally, because that's where it seems to me where he has the most issue. I think that his move over there to Fortis MMA is a very smart move for him, right? He's surrounding himself around guys that are UFC veterans, surrounding himself with a coach that will not take any of his shit and tell him like it is. Safe Sayud, we know, is a very solid coach in that aspect, and he's a very solid coach in terms of raising the ceiling of a lot of fighters that look to come to him. Maybe if they're Uriah Hall coming into his gym a little bit later on in his career, and I think Uriah only had like 2 or 3 solid performances under him before he ended up going on a bit of a losing streak and then getting cut from the UFC. But I think getting a kid like Trishan Gore at this point in time is the best move for Gore, especially from a coaching angle. I think he's the better striker here. I think his takedown defense is good enough to keep this fight standing. And I think from there, he can eventually find that knockout blow here against Josh Fremd, who's been flatlined in the past, right? Gregory Rodriguez was most recent in terms of knocking him out. I do believe he has another knockout loss on his record earlier. But like, I get why Fremd is the favorite, right? He has the more tools. He has a good takedown game. He has good cardio. He has good striking. And mixing the fact that Gore just got flatlined about 3.5 months ago, I understand the line. But I feel like this is one of those spots that if I overlook Gore and don't jump on this opportunity, especially that knockout prop at plus 330, I'm going to hate myself for it, because I feel like he can get that knockout. So a couple ways that I look to attack it. Gore, underdog, I don't mind it. The under 2.5, which is roughly around minus 130, depending on your bookie, I think that's a good spot as well, because that covers a possible Fremd knockout if in case he lands on Gore, and Gore is still compromised from being knocked out 3.5 months ago. And then obviously it covers my win condition, which I believe is Gore by knockout as well. And then obviously Gore by knockout plus 330, I think is a solid approach too. I don't know if I just have some sort of fascination or this love for Trishan Gore in the back of my head that's blinding me from the obvious play being Josh Fremd here, but I got to take this shot on him, especially that plus 330 by knockout. What are you thinking here, Cody? Bring me back to earth. Bring me back to earth, please.
Yeah, well, listen, he's got a greasy fight, man. You were talking about the disrespect to Andre Arlovski being on the prelims. To me, that's this. You got Tresean Gore's 0-2 in the UFC and 3-2 overall in his career versus Josh Fremd, who's 0-1 in the UFC. How is this on the main card over Andre Arlovski? It doesn't really make any sense. Even Chase Hooper. Why is Chase Hooper on the undercard compared to this? I don't understand. I don't know what to tell you. But yeah, I'm agreeing with a lot of what you're saying, but I'm going to go with Josh Fremd. I think the best play here is the fight doesn't go the distance at -165. Being that I think if Tresean Gore wins, like you said, he probably does knock him out. If Josh Fremd wins, he's going to put a pace on him, hopefully pull away down the stretch, and probably also take the TKO. So if you were a Josh Fremd supporter, I don't mind that Josh Fremd by TKO at +175. But I think if you just want to cover yourself on both sides, fight does not go the distance, -165. Probably your best bet. It's no disrespect to Tresean Gore. The problem is that where is this guy able to develop and go out there and figure himself out? Because as far as I'm concerned, pro debut in 2018. That's 4 years ago, pro debut. He fought a guy named Prince Ellerby, right? He won a split decision over Prince Ellerby, who's now 0-3 in MMA. Very next fight against this LJ Jones, who's 1-0. He wins a doctor stoppage. LJ Jones never fought again. Now his next, actually, they booked him against Nick Maximov, and Gore pulled out. Good move, I bet. And they booked him against Christian Eccles, 1-0. Guy's 2-2 overall now. Beats him. And now you're in the UFC, man. Now you're in the Ultimate Fighter. Now they thought he was the best looking prospect on the Ultimate Fighter. But how many times do you hear that? Oh, this guy looked like a beast in the house. How do they pan out in the UFC? Not so good. So they booked back the Brian Battle fight because it was like, oh, Brian Battle won tough, but Tresean Gore was the real guy that everyone really liked and looked like the best prospect. And yet, the Brian Battle fight, he got froze up, man. He didn't know what to do. Brian Battle just kickboxed off his back foot the entire time. And I just didn't really think that there was any like real volume or sense of urgency out of him. And then his fight with Cody Brundridge physically looks good. Stuff in the takedowns, all good stuff. And then gets caught and gets knocked out, being a little more aggressive. So what approach does he take now? He's 3-2 as a pro, man. He's got 5 pro MMA fights, and he's fighting on a main card of a UFC. 0-2 in the UFC already, and on the main card. Like, it's kind of a big task for him. I'm not saying he couldn't be a good prospect. He's still 28 years old, but this guy would have way benefited from fighting on the LFA scene for a little bit. He would have way benefited going on to the Contender Series and taking on some decent prospect from someone else's regional scene. He needs to develop, and they haven't really done him a whole lot of favors. So could he catch Josh Fremd? Yeah, bro. This guy's got power, no doubt about it. He's physically well put together, but I haven't necessarily seen it so far. And for Josh Fremd, I like this kid, man. I like this kid a lot. Also 28 years old, wrestled a little bit at Slippery Rock University, I believe. Has a bit of a wrestling base, has some decent striking. You see in his run, I was pointing this out to Paul yesterday. As an amateur, homie goes 8-2, okay? Oh, those amateur wins, look at the last 3 ones. Zach Dominique, 5-0. Darius Flowers, 10-4. Miles Robinson, 5-1. His pro career includes wins over Travis Davis, 6-2. Lamar Gussie, 3-0. Antonio Jones, 7-3. Bruno Oliveira, 8-2. Hanato Volante, Joel Bowman. He's not fighting guys with losing records. He's not building them up fighting the Tresean Gore 0-0, 0-3, 1-1 guys. This guy's been fighting good competition right from the get-go. Classically trained, good all around. I felt like he was going to be a problem. Now, he got knocked out by Gregory Rodriguez. It happens, right? RoboCop, good fighter in his own right. Rebounded well, and then I actually did pick him over Anthony Hernandez on the basis of this kid can wrestle. He's got good cardio. He can strike. The thing is he took the fight on a week's notice against Hernandez. Comes in replacing a tough opponent. And Hernandez, that's when everyone started making those mini Cain Velasquez comparisons. Like, he's all over him, right? 8 takedowns. 8 takedowns, and still Josh Fremd ends up on top of him to finish the second round, put some good work in, is live going into that third. Gave him a valiant effort on a week's notice against a kid now that subsequently was coming off a win over Rodolfo Vieira, beat Fremd, and now smoked right through Barrio. Who gave him the toughest fight in that run of guys? Josh Fremd, on short notice. I think there's a lot to like about this kid. I think he's going to make some improvements. So how does he come out here and match up with Gore? I think on the stand-up, he's going to have a lot more volume. Gore's got the bigger power. Of course, Fremd has been knocked out before, so that's why I think fight doesn't go the distance at -165 makes sense. If he loses, he's going to get caught. If he wins, he's going to stay to the outside, use his footwork, use his pace, use his speed maybe. Not his initial speed like fast twitch muscle reflex, but just with his combinations. Start to dig in, start to accumulate those numbers, eventually tire out Gore, and then hit him with something and put him away. He's got a lot of wins on the regional scene by knockout. And I think with Gore coming off that first knockout loss, you know, in a fight that he was trying to open up a little bit in. That's going to be at the back of his mind. He's still 3-2. He's still green. He's still win a fight in the UFC. Good chance to capitalize on this spot. So I went with Josh Fremd. I understand he's the money line favorite, but I think he gets it done by knockout, which is about, I think, plus 175. And then if you want to be safe, fight does not go the distance, minus 165.
Yeah, this is going to be like the ultimate litmus test for me, for Trishan Gore. Like if he goes out there and just doesn't really show me anything, I'll likely be selling on this guy at least until he's able to get more legitimate competition, especially on the regional scene, and then maybe he'll eventually make his way back to the UFC. But big test for him here. Let's see if he can pass it or not. Talking about big tests, well, there isn't really much one here for the Dana White Contender Series alum in this next fight. We got Waldo Cortez Acosta coming in as a minus 195 favorite. He's going up against Jared Vandera, who's coming in at plus 165, but also brings in a actually 4-fight losing streak. I thought it was initially 5 fights, but it will likely be 5 fights after this weekend wraps up. Now, funnily enough, both of these guys are one of those heavyweights that don't mind going deeper into rounds, right? They're not those guys that just go out there and just knock these guys out right off jump, right? If you just watch Waldo's fight against Danila Suzard on the Contender Series, you would expect this guy to be that guy, but he's not. If you look deeper into his record and watch more of his regional tape, you see that he's fine with mixing in takedowns and getting the clinch game going and taking his time to be a little bit more methodical and look for the best way to beat his opponents. And that's what Jared Vandera likes to do as well in terms of, doesn't really put everything into those shots. He likes to put output on his opponents. The best version of Justin Tafa, from Jared Vandera is the Justin Tafa fight, which is why Justin was on my mind, where he can just dance circles around his opponent, put volume on them, stay on the outside, stay away from the big power. That's how he wins his fights. But like when guys can actually throw back or counter effectively, similar to what Chase Sherman was able to do, or if guys are able to take him to the ground and grind him out, similar to what Alexei Oleinik did. Obviously, he was able to get the submission there, but Alexander Romanov, I believe Sergey Spivak as well. No, Spivak a couple fights back as well. Andre Arlovski, a very close fight there, but still Arlovski gets his hand raised there. When guys actually have resistance against him and can be effective with it, that's where Vandera runs into trouble. And I think this Waldo guy, although I think he doesn't really have like that high of a ceiling, his ceiling is still way higher than what Jared Vandera can bring here. I think if Vandera even wanted to change his approach in his fights, by looking to take this one to the ground, I think that will not fare well for him. I think Waldo is a good enough grappler that he should be able to deal with whatever Vandera is going to be throwing his way as well. So, the minus 200, a little bit wide for me to take a shot on Waldo because I still feel there are some question marks and some more things that we need to see from him. But the over is where my money will likely go here. It's sitting anywhere between minus 135 and minus 145. That's the over 1.5. I think that's what we're likely going to see here. If you want to get a little extra balls, you can go with the over 2.5. You can get plus money on that around plus 140. And even the fight to go to decision is plus 200. I think that this is one of those fights where we'll see, some clinch work and some pitter patter from distance from either guy to eat away at the clock here and likely see this fight go the full 15 minutes. I do still lean the Waldo Acosta side or Waldo Cortez Acosta side, as I do think he's a slightly better fighter here. And I think that this will likely be the last time that we see Jared Vandera inside the octagon, as it's going to be hard to keep him around after a 5-fight losing streak. So give me Cortez Acosta by decision. That's currently sitting around plus 450. Beautiful line there. But the over 1.5 will likely get the majority of my money on this matchup. What are you thinking here, Cody?
Yeah, pretty much the same sentiments. I got Waldo Cortez Acosta, and I think that he probably wins the fight by decision. With heavyweights, there's that natural instinct of like, oh man, it just takes one punch. And like, yeah, of course that is the case, but it just takes one punch in any division. Heavyweight's got that big power. But in this case, yeah, I mean, Acosta Cortez is a pro boxer, but he's a guy that, likes to use the jab, likes to rip the body, likes to set up his punches and kind of stay to the outside. So I don't necessarily see him planting his feet and trying to knock out Jared Vandera. And Jared Vandera, dude's built like Shrek. He's built like that thing in the movie The Goonies that they find in the restaurants, like Chain of the Radiator. It's like, good God, man. Can take a hell of a punch on him, but like, he's so simple, walk forward with his approach. This just has got greasy heavyweight fight written all over it. Jared Vandera's been in a lot of slug him out type fights, a lot of them going to decision. I think he can take Waldo Acosta's best shot. Meanwhile, if he was to show up in career best form, come forward, be aggressive, lean on him against the cage, throwing combinations, I just don't really think he's knocking out Waldo Cortez. To say, well, Jared Vandera is a BJJ black belt, so what if he was to end up on top? What if? What if? Well, here's the fucking thing. The dude doesn't wrestle. The dude doesn't shoot no takedowns. He shot 0 takedowns against Chase Sherman in his last fight. Well, what about your BJJ black belt? Also, what about that BJJ black belt? Because I remember the Alexei Olenek fight, dog. What are you doing? What are you doing? And he gets scarfold. Oh, my God. Vandera's ground game, not great. His ring IQ, non-existent. His ability to take a punch, though, pretty good. So I think this fight goes the distance. But I got to go with Waldo Cortez Acosta. I just feel like he gets the cleaner work done. Been actually watching this guy for a little bit. So he, again, pro boxer. He's like 6-4 as a pro boxer. It's not like he had an illustrious career, but he had fought at a decent level. And again, 6'4" with like a 78-inch reach. Like he does fight long. Not terrible, right? Bellator initially scoops him up. He fights Mo Deleese. Now, Mo Deleese, god-awful. But Mo Deleese, PFL veteran, Bellator veteran, guy that wrestled at a fairly high level and continues to be a wrestling coach. And like Mo Deleese shot a pile of takedowns, and Cortez Acosta had them all stuffed out. Training out of Arizona, getting good training camps. It's like, you know what? He can wrestle a little bit. We know he's got the boxing, but his ability to just press himself up against the cage and stay upright. I know he's losing time off the clock, staying in these clinch exchanges, but he's not getting taken down. That's a big plus. When he does separate from Mo Deleese, he lights him up. Of course, doesn't knock him out. Doesn't have that big power, but does land the strikes. Since then, beats Derek Weaver, easy win. Thomas Pedersen, LFA heavyweight title on the line. Pedersen, for the first 2 rounds, is leaning on him up against the cage, tiring him out, controlling him. But again, Costa Cortez not getting taken down, gets his hands going, knocks him out with 7 seconds left in the 3rd round. It was a 5-rounder, so I think he beats him down the stretch anyways. But again, you see how he gets controlled up against the cage early, lands his combinations, gets going, wins the fight. That Suzart guy on Contender Series, the guy looked grossly like undersized. Can't really say that one was all that impressive, but still does what he has to do, knocks him in the 1st round. So how does he fight Vandera? Again, stays at the outside. His wrestling defense obviously come a long way, and he's fighting a guy that doesn't even shoot takedowns. So this is a boxing match. He's going to have the hand speed. He's going to have the footwork, stay to the outside, use his jab, touch Vandera up. I think Vandera will be tough and gutsy and come forward, crash the pocket, take those shots, lean on him a little bit. He just doesn't have enough to put it all together. You can't now point Andre Arlovski from range. Chances are you're going to have trouble against someone else. Now, this is Andre Arlovski's 30th pro fight or 30th fight in the UFC versus Cortez's UFC debut. So if he gets gun shy, I wouldn't rule Jared Vandera out from being able to win this fight. But if he wins, it's going to be by decision. So I would say take the fight to go to decision, cover you on both sides. But I do have Waldo Cortez Acosta. I think he wins a decision, and him by decision at plus 475 looks just too good. So that's the move I decided to make.
It's always sweaty to take a decision prop in a heavyweight fight, but this seems like the perfect 2 ingredients we need for that to end up coming to fruition. All right, let's get to this co-main event of the night, and it takes place in the welterweight division. We got veteran Tim Means coming in as a plus 160 underdog. The return on Max Payne Griffin is minus 190. Now, whenever I see Tim Means as an underdog, my eyes lighten or brighten up a little bit, because I'm like, this guy is a solid fighter, good combinations, good diverse skill set when it comes to his striking, sneaky submission game as well. But then you see his last couple performances, and although he did have a 3-fight winning streak prior to his loss to Kevin Holland, you still see the speed starting to slow down. You see the durability starting to take a little bit of a hit. The guy, I believe he's going to be turning 37 or 38 in less than 4 months. Let me just get this number. Or sorry, he's going to be turning 39 in 4 months' time. Like, he's definitely getting up there in age. He has a ton of miles on his body as well. He has 25 UFC fights as well. He's fought pretty much everybody that you could name in the welterweight division, from the Neo Magnies to the Matt Browns to the John Howards, the George Sullivans, the Alex Cowboy Oliveras. Like, he's had a ton of fights, and I think it's starting to catch up to him now, Cody. I think he's going to be at a speed, athleticism, and power disadvantage here against Max Payne Griffin, who I'm not really that big on myself, but I think that his speed and power will be a little bit too much for Tim Means here. Like, We saw Max Griffin start to struggle a little bit with Carlos Condit in the second round of their fight, but he really pulled it together in that third round, was able to grind that one out. But you can see where Tim Means could be successful if you just go back and watch that Carlos Condit fight. If he can get into a striking groove, if he can get his combinations flowing, if he can put those punches on Max Griffin, it will demoralize him, which is why I'm not the most privy on taking Max Griffin at minus 190. But that Max Griffin via knockout line is calling my name, Cody. Griffin by knockout, anywhere from plus 250 to plus 300. I think he can eventually find that chin of Tim Means, and we've seen it get touched over and over again in his last several fights. That's where I think we're going to see here as well. I think Max Griffin will likely land on him enough that it's going to open up that opportunity for him to get that knockout. So give me Max Griffin by knockout plus 250, plus 300. That's likely the only action I'm going to have on this matchup. What are you thinking here?
Yeah, a lot of the same thoughts. Like Tim Means plus money seems good, but at 38 years old, I think he's had his day. Still capable of going out there and getting the big win, but it seems like he fades in a lot of these fights after a good first round. Even Kevin Holland, I thought he started out good, fades away. Daniel Rodriguez, he started really good in that fight, faded away. Nico Price, there's Sergio Moraes, he got robbed in that Moraes fight, truth be told. And I thought he lost the Bilal Muhammad fight, but damn, dude, he almost beat Bilal Muhammad. That one aged quite well. Tim Means is capable of being in it at the highest level, especially in these striking style matchups. But if you pressure him a little bit, you can hit him with some decent stuff. Doesn't seem like he has that durability or that cardio to keep with it as much anymore. So, yeah, I understand he's just coming off a 3-fight winning streak, but Leon Staropoli, super low level. Mike Perry, no longer with the organization. Nicholas Dalby shouldn't be with the organization. And they've done a good job of booking along Tim Means. But, yeah, with Max Griffin, I know he's been a little bit banged up. He's a little bit older. I just feel like he's way fresher than Tim Means. He's got a nasty jab. He fights well to the outside. Means' biggest weapon is 6 foot with a 75-inch reach. He's long and rangy from the outside. But with Griffin, dude, 76-inch reach. He's got an excellent jab. And I feel like he was kind of a bust. But if you look at it, split decision loss to Alex Oliveira in a fight that I thought he won. He actually didn't look bad there. And then smashes Ramiz Brahimaj, takes his ear clean off of his head. Although it's a low-level win, look good. The Song Kanan fight, ices him in 2 minutes. Low-level win, but look good. The Carlos Condit fight, like, he's going to struggle a little bit. But it's that last fight with Neil Magny. I thought he looked really good, man. He outstruck Neil Magny, and he stuffed 8 of 9 takedown attempts from Neil Magny. So his wrestling looked a lot better. Physically, he looked good. He landed some decent strikes. Split decision loss. Could have gone his way. Did look like he's making some improvements, adding some new wrinkles to his game. I feel like it would all be good enough to maybe edge out Tim Means. So I'm tempted to say that it's going to be him by decision. Yeah, but with Means, I just don't know. Like, is he going to get caught with something? It seems to me like he tends to give up submissions after he gets rocked. I don't know that that's going to be an avenue that Max Griffin is going to look to pursue. So I'm going to go with the Griffin by decision. But yeah, this is a greasy enough spot, I think. Like, it's tight. It's tightly contested. Dirty Bird could pull it out. I just got to go with Max Griffin. And in terms of a direct prop, I don't like them, but I settled on the Griffin by decision.
There we go. Very weird fight to actually have in the co-main event slot as well. At least in my opinion, maybe they're trying to give that respect to Tim Means, but hopefully it's a fun fight. Hopefully it does, or it gives us the entertainment that we so desire from a co-main event spot. So looking forward to that. All right. We are about to break down the main event of this card for you guys, but if you haven't already, please hit that like. Make sure you guys hit that subscribe below as well. And drop a comment if you're watching this on the back end. Let us know what your favorite props are as well. And we'll see if they end up cashing when we do the show again next week. Also, shout out to the All-Star for hosting us on their platform. Make sure you guys check out their app. You can hit that up in the link below. And I promise it'll be one of the best MMA apps that you have on your mobile device. So please check it out. All right, Cody, let's get right into this main event. Featherweight belt here. We got Calvin Kattar coming in at minus 110, which means that his opponent, Arnold Allen, is also a minus 110. Cody, this fight is a pick'em. It is a flip the coin. Who do you think ends up winning? That's pretty much what the odds makers are telling us now. But very interesting because Calvin Kattar was the one that opened up as a minus 175 favorite, got bet to minus 200. This was back in March, not March, sorry. Wow, weird. They seem to have had this fight initially matched up on Bet Online way back in March, even though it didn't come to fruition back then. And then back in September is when we started to see action start to come in on the Arnold Allen side, pushed Calvin Kattar to about minus 150. And then he even pushed Calvin Kattar to all the way to plus 125. But action immediately coming right back in on him, bringing this fight back to a pick 'em line. So, a ton of dissension amongst the masses here, right? Is it going to be the hype train of Arnold Allen, the 18-1 record of Arnold Allen, and that winning streak that he's currently on? Let me just get that exact number here. 369 11 fight winning streak from Arnold Allen, but it seems like he's doing it very quietly. And the reason for that being is his last 3 fights have stretched between obviously this weekend and January of 2020. He's only had 2 fights during this COVID era, which just showcases how inactive this guy normally is. And that's not very good, especially if you want to go out there and try to get a title shot. Luckily for him, he has a guy in Calvin Kattar across the cage from him this weekend, where if he does beat him, he likely lines himself up for a title shot. Josh Emmett was the last guy that was Josh Emmett was the last guy to beat Calvin Kattar. He's still kind of in limbo. Doesn't really know if he's getting the next title shot. But what we do know is that the champion of that division, Alexander Volkanovski, has his eyes now set on Islam Makhachev, and that fight's probably going to be taking place in February. So maybe even the winner of this matchup against Josh Emmett, even if it's Calvin Kattar, I think people would want to see that rematch considering how close it was, and a lot of people believing that Calvin deserved to get his hand raised that night as well. But even a fresh matchup of Arnold Allen versus Josh Emmett would be solid as well. Stylistically, how these guys match up, Calvin Kattar, much better volume striker here, right? He puts his punches together very well, traverses the cage very well, uses his kicks to manage his distance well. Defensively speaking, in terms of his grappling, I think he showcased that he's pretty good in that aspect too. So if Arnold Allen wants to try to use his strength here and try to bully this guy in the clinch or even try to get him to the ground, I don't know how long he can be successful doing that. Not to mention, this is going to be the first 5-round fight in Arnold Allen's UFC career. I don't know how he's going to fare with that, considering the amount of experience that Calvin has in main event and championship rounds. I think that we see Calvin get stronger as fights go on outside of that Max Holloway fight, but you do see him winning later rounds and more often than not when he steps inside the cage. And I think that's going to be very important for him here, as he'll likely deal with a very strong and berserker type approach from Arnold Allen early in this fight, but I think it's going to start to taper off. We'll see Calvin Kattar start to put his pedal to the metal, and from there he should be able to get up on volume, maybe finish Arnold Allen late, but I do think that this ultimately goes the full 25 minutes where Allen gets his hand raised by decision. Last thing I'll say before I pass this on over to you, Cody, I think a lot of people are going to get caught up in the fact that Arnold Allen destroyed Dan Hooker in his last fight and came out fighting the way that he did. But that's not how Arnold fights. Yes, he dropped Sodiq Yusuff, but that was with his patient approach, right? In the Dan Hooker fight, he knew Hooker was still compromised from that atrocious weight cut that he had to go through. So he put the pedal to the metal pretty much immediately and got him out there soon thereafter. He's not going to be able to get away with that against a guy like Calvin Kattar. I think Calvin will be able to counter effectively, and he'll halt that forward aggression from Allen, which will force Allen to go back to fighting the way that he normally does. Low volume, not too much doing much for the judges unless he completely outmatches his opponent, right? He outstruck Gilbert Melendez by nearly 90 significant strikes because Melendez had nothing to give in that matchup. But in that fight against Sodiq Yusuff, competitive fight, it came down to that knockdown and maybe even one takedown from Allen in terms of how close that fight was. But that's why Allen ended up getting his hand raised. Here against Kattar, he has way more to worry about. From the strikes to the movement to the combinations that are coming his way, I think it's going to put his brain into overload here. And I think that we'll see Calvin Kattar take advantage of it and continue to rack up those points, rack up that output, and hopefully he can get his hand raised here. But I'm going to go Calvin Kattar. Kattar by decision. Fight goes to decision. Also is sitting at minus 135. But Kattar to win by decision is currently sitting at plus 215. Sign me up, Cody. What are you thinking here?
I took the Kattar by decision. Same thing.
Let's go.
Pretty much all the points you mentioned. I mean, he's got the superior volume. He's been in the 5-round spots. He should just be able to take down during the stretch. But yeah, I'm not one for fighter bashing. It's just I'm one for looking at the dark side of certain records. And the 11-fight win streak looks good, sounds good, but to me, not all that impressed. When you look at it, these 11 guys: Alan Omer, cut. Yautsin Meza, cut. Makwan Murakami, not cut, but he's actually won one of his last 5 fights. He just got thrashed by Jonathan St. Pierre. So he's on his way out. Mads Burnell, cut. Can't even win a fight in Bellator for that matter. Jordan Rinaldi, cut. Gilbert Melendez, retired. Nick Lentz, retired. Sodiq Yusuff and Dan Hooker. So really, of those 11, the first 9 are really no longer with the promotion. Makwan Murakami, maybe Fringe, still with the promotion. But it's not as if he's gone through like a gamut of top challengers. He's kind of just low-key fights about once a year. One fight in 2015, one fight in 2016, one fight in 2017, one fight in 2018, 2 fights in 2019. What? One fight in 2020, one fight in 2021. This is actually second fight in 2022, late in the year. He fights like once a year against mid-level guys. So the streak, again, it looks good. Can't take that away from him. But again, I'm not like super impressed by it. Of note, of those fights, all of them, low volume. So he goes 15 minutes with Yautsin Meza. He lands 31. He went 15 minutes with Makwan Murakami. He landed 32. He choked Mads Burnell in the 3rd round. He had landed 29 to that point, and he had lost the first 2 rounds on all the judges' scorecards. He needed a 3rd round finish to beat Mads Burnell, and he did catch him. Bad performance, though. Jordan Rinaldi went 15 minutes. He landed 37. This is Jordan Rinaldi. Now, you mentioned the Melendez fights. Like, oh, this fight's like, oh, shit. It's like, oh, shitty. Like, oh, shitty. Lands on Melendez. Hadn't fought for 2 years and retired right after the fight. Not the same guy. Was there getting leg kicked all night. Actually, I offered him a fight the other day. I was like, you are the way they retired? Like, you out of your UFC contract? And he's like, yeah, I do. Honestly, I would like one more fight. He's like, against nobody that has any interest in kicking me in the leg. Ha, ha, ha. Like, doesn't want to get kicked in the leg ever again. He was kind of on his way out. So that's the outlier. It's the only time he's eclipsed 65 significant strikes in a fight, and it's against a 40-year-old aged legend who hadn't fought in 2 years. I get it. Who he is low volume. Nick Lentz, 63. Sodiq Yusuff, 21. The Lentz fight, what's important to note is that he does win, but it's ultra competitive. And in fact, he loses the 1st round on one judge's scorecard, and he loses the 3rd round on one judge's scorecard. It's actually a close competitive fight against an aged Nick Lentz who's since retired. The Sodiq Yusuff fight, I urge you to rewatch it. He gets outworked the entirety of the 1st round. Boom, clips him, puts Sodiq Yusuff on rubbery legs, wins the 1st round. He gets beaten up, or he's getting outlanded for the entirety of the 2nd round, doubled up on the strike numbers, and boom, partial head kick blocked by Sodiq Yusuff. He does the stanky leg, all of a sudden that steals him the round. And then in the 3rd round, he loses the 3rd round on all 3 judges' scorecard. He landed 2 significant strikes in the 3rd round. His cardio didn't look good. He didn't look good. His volume didn't look good. It was his ability to rock Sodiq 2 times. Now, Sodiq Yusuff's been rocked a whole lot of times. Calvin Kattar, meanwhile, he Boston strong, bro. He's able to take a punch. Max Holloway hit him with 445 significant strikes. The guy lived to tell the tale. Should they have thrown the towel? Maybe. But they didn't, because he wouldn't have wanted it that way. I think that he's durable. I think that he's got the volume. I think he's going to be able to take what Allen throws out. And I don't think Allen's going to throw a whole lot. Now, the Hooker fight, Allen does go balls to the walls, 1st round finish. First of all, he would have gassed had he not gotten that finish. And second of all, I'm a firm believer that there's 2 versions of Dan Hooker. There's Dan Hooker prior to ever meeting Edson Barbosa and Michael Chandler, and then there's Dan Hooker present day. And bro, it is fucking 2 different guys, man. He can't take that same shot that he used to, and I feel like, again, just you're capitalizing on the right opponent at the right time. Now, I don't mean to discredit anything that Arlen Allen's doing. He's on a long winning streak. He's in the world's premier organization. He's a soft-spoken kid. But I do feel like there are levels to this, and Calvin Kattar should have the technical boxing, the 5-round experience, the overall volume, the ring generalship, maybe gets caught with a couple shots here and there, maybe drops around, but otherwise takes control of this thing firmly down the stretch and solidifies it. So there's an argument he beat Josh Emmett his last time out. I think the guy's top-notch. I think that he's still in the prime of his career. He's still got a lot to offer. And, I do feel like he picks up decision victory. So good-looking plus money prop on that fight to go Kattar's way by decision, and that's what I'm going to anchor myself onto.
I love it. I'm glad that we see the main event the same way here. It's hard to get on that Arnold Allen train when he just does not do enough in his fights. And when you have a volume puncher like Calvin Kattar, seems like the no-brainer pick here would be the Calvin Kattar side, and we're getting a damn good price to take that as well. All right, let's get to the 3 best prop bets, and then we'll wrap this thing up for you guys. I'll kick it off as I normally do. First up, I'm going to go with the Christian Rodriguez inside the distance at plus 100. It's still waiting to be released on the majority of bookies. I think I would honestly bet that probably up to maybe minus 150 or so. I think he is that much better than Joshua Weems. I think you'll be able to eventually find that knockout. I'm just throwing inside the distance there just in case he does decide to go for a club and sub opportunity or something like that. But I think he finishes this kid without much issue at all. Next up, I'm going to go with Junyoung Park inside the distance at plus 200. I think his pace and his pressure is going to be too much for Joseph Holmes to deal with here. I think that opens up a late finishing opportunity for Junyoung Park. You can get Park round 3 around plus 1100. I think that's a phenomenal way to jump into this matchup. But even just taking him straight up inside the distance, I like that as well. And then last prop for me here, gonna go a little bit juicier. I'm gonna hold my guy Trishan Gore into some good standings. So hopefully he can go out there and prove me right. Let's go Gore by knockout at plus 330. Hopefully he can deal with that early onslaught from Josh Fremd, stop some takedowns, keep this in the striking realm, and then uncork a bomb landing on Josh Fremd's chin and put him to sleep. Plus 330. Take my money. Let's go Trishan Gore. Cody, lay it on him, my brother.
Yeah, we got big plus money this week. Calvin Kattar by decision plus 240. Again, he's more of a decision guy, even on the regional scene. Dude's got great boxing. But look at his record, man. A lot of decisions. And I think he's taken on a tough enough opponent and Arnold Allen. Both of them can take each other's shots. Arnold Allen's low pace. Calvin Kattar's high pace. Going to take the over down the stretch, win a decision. I'm pretty confident fight's going to decision. I just need Kattar to get his hand raised at the end of it. Plus 240. You could do way worse than that. Moving on, we got another big fat one here. And I don't mean that because they're big old heavyweights. But Cortez Acosta, plus by decision, plus 475. Again, I get that they're heavyweights, and I get that he's like pro boxing experience. But it's like, man, he touches a lot from the outside. Jab from the outside, works the body from the outside. Vandera has shown nothing in the UFC other than some toughness. The dude is tough. He can't take a shot or two. I do expect him to take a shot or two. And even if he shows up in the Chase Sherman fight, you know, and brings that aggression and brings that frontward pressure and really breaks down Acosta, I feel like the significant shots are going to come down his way. He's going to be able to edge out this decision. Plus 475. Again, if you want to be a little safer, just take fight goes the distance. If you want to be a little more specific and hit a plus 475, Waldo Cortez Acosta by decision. And we got another plus 475 for you. Chase Hooper, this time by knockout. I can't just be all decision all the time. A little bit of violence. Who would have thunk the violence was going to come from the skinny nerd in the back? This is the kind of guy you don't want to kick sand on the beach because he can actually fight. He's filling out this 145 frame. I feel like Steve Garcia coming down in 45 will struggle to make the weight. He has lackluster grappling, gives up his back a whole lot, and he's there to get TKO'd. Chin not that good, durability not all that good. Factor in a bad weight cut on top of that, I think Hooper's going to take over. He's not a world beater by any stretch of the imagination, but he fights the winning style. Drag these guys down, use that size, use that top control. You know, big, long legs, can get a body triangle, can suffocate you if need be. It's going to win against the low-level guys, and the UFC is doing a fantastic job of feeding him that. So, I mean, I actually was one of these guys that had Steve Garcia the last time out, and as a result, his opponent mahashated in my apple pie. Not again. Steve Garcia can't be trusted. Weak chin, weak grappling, Chase Hooper taking over, plus 475. And, of course, honestly, it has nothing to do with MMA. It has nothing to do with this prop show. But Jake Paul is going to win. And I think he's winning a decision, which is like plus 170 right now.
Really?
Yeah, I got in on a plus 110 money line, but I see it's like money's flowing
what are you
in
thinking?
on this.
What are you thinking here? Is it a behind-the-scenes type of shenanigans going on here, or do you just think he just puts together a better body of work and beats Anderson Silva?
Like, I could see him knocking out Anderson Silva for no other reason than Anderson Silva's an old man and likes to play with his food. Like, it has nothing to do with Jake Paul being some extremely good boxer. It has everything to do with Anderson Silva's 47 years old and been through the ringer. But yeah, dude, for me, it's more so that he just doesn't give a fuck, right? Like, you're going into a prize fight, and the biggest thing that you can try to bet on is that my guy wants to win this fight more than he wants to breathe air. That's the biggest thing you can try to get. We love betting on a Darren Elkins. We love betting on a Nate Landwehr. We love betting on someone that's going to go out there and be willing to die if need be to get the job done. For Jake Paul, this is kind of his everything, right? I mean, if he wins this, he just beat Anderson fucking Silva. It's big for his brand. It's big for his legacy. He's young. He's hungry. He trains 3 times a day. He can afford to bring in the best nutritionists and the best training partners and the best coaches and the best rehab stuff. It means a lot to him. He's training for that win. Anderson Silva, meanwhile, has had 20 years of mailing it in performances. Him versus Taos Laitis. Him versus Damian Maia. him dancing in there. The first time he loses to Chris Weidman for no other reason than he doing a little fucking shuffle with his hands. So what are you doing, bro? It's a fist fight. Breaks gets knocked out. They give him the microphone. Oh, Anderson, greatest middleweight champ of all time. You just got knocked out by Chris Weidman. Whoa. The MMA universe is on fire. You remember the first knockout, bro. It hit home. Yeah. It was like, holy shit, what did I just witness? Okay? He gets in the mic and he's like, oh, yeah, he happens. He happens. It's like,
he's normal.
He didn't give a fuck. He's normal. Oh, I got knocked out. He's normal. Then he breaks his leg and he's like, oh, my son says, Dad, no more. No more. Dude, that was almost 10 years ago. And he's still doing the goddamn thing. Now, he went the distance with Daniel Cormier, and he went the distance with Israel Adesanya, and he went the distance with, like, pretty good guys. But again, for no other reason than the respect factor. I think he is a legend. You look at him, you don't really want to put a beating on him by any sorts, but he's prone to go against the ropes and wave you on, hey, come hit me, and be an idiot. And, like, it's super entertaining in MMA. It could work. You know, you land that one big counter punch. But, dude, in boxing, you're just giving rounds away. He did the same thing with Bisping. He would go and lie up against the cage and be like, come hit me, come hit me. The Nick Diaz fight. Nick Diaz is high as fuck and fighting at middleweight. And it's like he's lying down in the ring being like, engage me. Anderson won't do it. He tends to just give away fights for the purpose of entertainment. And so to him, I don't think he gives a shit. He's probably getting paid more money to fight Jake Paul than he ever did in any MMA fight ever. Fact. It's a fact. They're giving him $5 million this fight. That's more than he's ever paid in an MMA fight. You want to know the saddest thing of the weekend? Not Peter Yan getting screwed, not little Cody losing money. The saddest thing I saw all weekend was that Aljamain Sterling just became a millionaire. How the fuck is he not already a millionaire? Are you kidding me?
Wow.
Are you been fighting in the UFC for almost a decade? He's your champion. He's defended the title. Like, in what world is this guy? Like the NFL, bro, you made practice squad for 2 seasons, you're a millionaire. You threw some passes. Baseball, you played 1 good season. Like, bro, this guy's had to fight at the top echelon against some of the best guys in the sport for almost 10 years. And he's just recently got $1 million. Had to go through a major neck surgery, by the way. Body failing him by the minute. Just recently became a millionaire. That's crazy to me. That's crazy to me. So for Anderson, I would say not just collecting the paycheck, but it's not a I need to win this fight type situation. It's I need to show up, dance around, entertain the crowd. That's it, right? And I think that's what he'll do. So by decision, plus 170, Jake Paul, he's just going to work him off against the ropes. Even if you go back and watch the release sparring footage of Jake Paul versus Hasim Rockman, yeah, he's competitive with Rockman because Rockman's in there dancing. He's not doing anything. He's not throwing counters. He's talking. He's guiding you. Anderson does the same thing. He'll let you tee off on him. He'll back into the ropes. And unlike the Michael Bisping fight, he can't just throw a flying knee up the gut anymore. Like, he's got to rely on his left hand and his right hand. And for the record, you ain't fighting Tito Ortiz. So I just think Jake Paul is going to take his best shot, rely on moving forward, landing shots to the body. I'm a little bit worried that Jake Paul knocks him out. But I think that respect factor, it's like, dude, thanks for coming in and working this freak show for me. I'll try to let you leave with as many brain cells as you showed up with.
Man, I don't know, man. Something just sits wrong with me to see Anderson Silva as a plus 170 dog to Jake Paul in a striking battle. I get all the points that you're making; they are valid points and things as well. The only thing that in the back of my mind is like, okay, this guy's receiving the biggest paycheck of his career, likely, from one fight. He may not go balls to the wall. He may not actually try to go out there and get the win. And then the counterpoint for me in my head would be, why would he do that to his legacy? Why would he have an L to Jake Paul in a professional combat sport on his record? How would he want that? Like, legacy-wise, it doesn't make sense. But at a certain point, money surpasses legacy. And I feel like this might be one of those spots where he's just fine to just phone it in and make it look competitive, make it be entertaining. And that might end up being his downfall as well. But I think the gambler in me, the degenerate in me, will still end up pulling the trigger on Anderson Silva. Knowing all those things at that plus money, I think I'm going to have to do it. But there you guys go. Cody's going to go with the Paul via decision. That's how you can scrape out the plus money, by taking his side. Just taking Anderson Silva for me, straight up plus 170. I think is not a bad way to go about it. But there's just so much shenanigans behind the scenes that I just don't know if I can put legitimate hard-earned money on a matchup like this. It's a fucking circus, Cody. It's a circus.
Bet the draw then, dude. Honestly, they're not. Yeah, bro.
Not
I'm
a bad
telling you.
way to go about it.
No, man, it's an 8-round fight, so all you gotta do is split the rounds, which is not inconceivable. It's boxing, so they're just gonna score like that anyways. And like these freak show fights, especially when both guys are kind of the A side, look for the draw. The biggest like easy dude money was made, and that's why I think they're a little bit sharper onto it now. But Roy Jones Jr. versus Mike Tyson, everyone bet the draw. It's like, is there even a winner being declared?
Yeah.
And Tyson shit kicked him in 7 of the 8 rounds. And it was a draw. The whole thing was set up to be a draw, right? So, yeah, I mean, if he goes out, the money's in the rematch. If he fights Anderson Silva competitively and doesn't beat him, but it's a split draw or a majority draw, then they're just going to run the thing back. Like, no, they have no shame. And I can see them doing it. My last point being, this is just my greasy theory on the matter, but the line dropped plus money for Jake Paul and sat like that for like, I don't know, 2-3 weeks. It sat like that. Now, why is that? Because no self-respecting adult would put his money on Jake Paul. Just little kids would. Little kids don't got no money. They're not gambling, right? So the line sits like that. But now it's fight week. The sharp money's coming in on Paul. It's moved it 100 points in the week alone. Like, people realize what's up. And Anderson does an interview, and they're like, how's training been? He's like, oh, I got knocked out twice. Like, oh, my God. Did he actually?
He walked that back. He walked that statement back.
Yeah, he walked that back being like, oh, I no speak no English. And that's what Chael Sonnen warned us about the guy 10 years ago. He said, this guy does speak English. And he always falls behind, I no speak no English. It's like, it's all bullshit. He walked it back being like, oh, it's hard sparring. I get it. Maybe he got knocked out. Maybe he didn't get knocked out. All I'm saying is the body don't work the same at 46. Whereas, like, I don't know. Writing's on the wall. Same thing with Tyron Woodley. Tyron Woodley's a bum, right? But I preach the same thing. Woodley's not going to beat Jake Paul because Woodley's a bum. But he's aged. He's not interested in throwing punches. He's interested in getting paid and putting on a show, right? Anderson's the same thing. He likes to put on a show. He likes to dance. He likes to jive. You know, well, he's hurting his legacy. He fucking fought Derek Brunson. You know what I mean? Like, he didn't care. He fought anybody. Everybody and anybody. You want to fight Jared Cannonier? You want to fight Brunson? You want to fight a high-end guy like Izzy? He always accepts what gets put in front of him. And I truthfully don't honestly think he cares. I'll leave you with this, right? You obviously remember Mark Hunt, the man, the myth, the legend. Yeah, okay. So he's like one of the best K1 fighters from New Zealand all time, right? Guy's an absolute animal. Couple wins over Jerome LeBanner, fought all the best guys, fought Crow Cop, transitions over to MMA, started off poorly in Pride, but then just goes on an absolute tear, right? Rips through people, kicking some serious ass, becomes a bona fide guy, hurt Fabricio Verdum in their title fight, almost won a UFC heavyweight title, was like a perennial top guy, retires from the UFC, tries to sue them, and then he took a boxing match in Australia versus this guy named Paul Gallen. He was a rugby player, right? No real boxing experience, just a rugby player. Fights Mark Hunt, kick the fuck out of him, right? Because Mark Hunt's not Mark Hunt anymore. You remember him as a badass because he was a badass. He's not anymore. Anderson Silva beats Tito. Oh, man, that's crazy. He beat fat Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. Oh, man, I'm not crazy. Who saw that one coming? He's going to put a spectacle on. He doesn't care about winning. That's the biggest thing. I don't want to bet on a guy who's there to have fun. I want to bet on a guy that's willing to break his arm and need be. I'll give TJ one thing. He fought for my dollar. Just wasn't able to actually do it successfully, but he didn't quit. Aaron Pico, I lost money on him on the Bellator card a few weeks back. The guy fucking tried. I'll give them that. Anderson, he's going to a little hobble to the left and a hobble to the right and do a little shimmy and shake and get hit by a punch and wave you on, and then all of a sudden the round ends. And he lost the round, but the fans are cheering, so that's all he cares about. Not enough for me.
Yeah, there's just so much narrative going into this matchup that I was just like, you know what, I should just sit on the outside and watch as a spectator because it's a circus. At the end of the day, it's a fucking circus, no matter who steps in there with Jake Paul. But it should be a fun one and entertaining one regardless. Not to mention Uriah Hall in the co-main event against a former star running back football player as well in Le'Veon Bell. So should be entertaining at least, but let's not expect the highest level of combat sports that night. All right, Cody, I'll wrap this thing, or I'll let you say anything you want to say on the back end here, and then I'll wrap this thing up and bring us on home.
Yeah, no, that's it, man. UFC knew what they were doing as well. They were like, oh, shit, Jake Paul's fighting Anderson? Okay, let's put a card together. full of guys that may or may not have a long-term future with us, and we may or not owe a fight to contractually. And then they're starting it at 4 o'clock to make sure they steer clear. So it'll be a fun weekend of fights. I believe there's a Bellator on as well. So we'll definitely make it a fun, exciting, have some good plays. But ultimately, it's kind of like a freak show fight weekend. You have Bellator, a greasy UFC offering, Jake Paul versus Anderson Silva. It's definitely getting Halloween season because we're getting some spooky fights. Le'Veon Bell versus Uriah Hall. Uriah Hall's talking about killing himself before this fight. Odd marketing strategy. Odd marketing strategy indeed. But who am I to judge? I'm looking forward to watching it. Thanks for having me on the show. Love doing it with you, man. And hopefully we can catch some props for all the viewers.
Also, something that just kind of popped into my head, Uriah Hall and Anderson Silva fought each other around Halloween as well, a couple years ago. So it's funny that they're both fighting on a boxing fight now, or a boxing event, pretty much right around the corner from Halloween.
Fought each other, okay, and Uriah Hall gives him the first 2 rounds because he's like doesn't want to hurt his favorite fighter, and then shatters him with the legs, and it's like, oh damn, and then they hug each other, right? Imagine they hug each other in that moment. It's just like, bro, in 2 years you fight on my undercard against football running back Le'Veon Bell. I fight Jake Paul. It'd be like, yeah, okay, I really fucked you up in this fight because you are not making no sense. And then, yeah, dude, that's actually what's going down. So I don't make the simulation. I just live in it.
Exactly. All right, make sure you guys hit that like and subscribe on the way out. Me and Cody will be back next week to break down UFC Vegas 64, which is headline now. They've made it official. Marina Rodriguez and Amanda Lemos will be in the main event slot there for 5 rounds. So we make sure we'll break down that fight for you guys. Good luck on all your bets this week. Hit that like and subscribe. Drop a comment as well. Good luck on all your action this week, and then we'll see you guys next week. Peace.